Chapter 1496. You know me, right? In this small cubicle, only Tangua and LV Yufan were left. LV Yuji was still unconscious, which meant that there were only the two of them. LV Yufan was still surprised that he had returned to his childhood. How could he return to this time? It was too late. When he suddenly heard Tangua's words, he subconsciously raised his head. Wait, no, it's different. The fact that the first princess was here and had saved him meant that everything was different now. This was a barren mountain with no roads. There was no such thing as the other party accidentally saving him. Moreover, it started to rain heavily last night. From his current condition, it could be seen that he was saved when he rolled down the hill. He remembered that in his previous life, he was drenched in the rain for a whole night. He and his sister rolled to the side of the road. In the end, he was saved by a beggar and was unconscious for several days. He didn't want to be a beggar and wanted to take revenge. Therefore, he joined a rich family as a page boy. Now, everything was different. This difference was most likely caused by this eldest princess. Your Highness the First Princess. LV Yufan was a smart person. He was no longer a child. Tangua smiled and looked at him. When he was about to guess something, she said, "Little top scorer LV, I'm very happy that you're back." What? LV Yufan's eyes widened. Was she going to lay her cards on the table? He hadn't thought of what to say. System, the host is teasing me again. Alright, as someone who had been scammed by Lu Qing before, if I were to reveal my identity, Lu Yufan would have no choice but to work for me. Your Highness the First Princess, did you come here especially for me? LV Yufan accepted the fact that both of them were reborn. In my previous life, I was deceived by LV Qing and caused Your Highness to be in trouble. Now, Your Highness came to save me and became LV Yufan's savior. I wonder what Your Highness's purpose is. If Your Highness wants to take my life personally, please give me time to take revenge. After I kill LV Qing, I will ask for Your Highness's forgiveness. If I wanted your life, I would have asked someone to stab you when I saw you yesterday evening. In your previous life, you and I were both deceived by a scoundrel. We are in the same boat. I saved you so that you could deal with LV Qing. Now, I just pinched him lightly and he died. It's very satisfying. The corners of Tangua's lips curled up slightly. Her beautiful eyes fell on Lu Qing. If you kill him with your own hands, I'll feel better. LV Yufan's small body was trembling. Was this still the kind-hearted and pure first princess? And you did wrong, after you killed LV Qing, you'll be loyal to my brother for the rest of your life. How's it? Alright, as long as Your Highness gives me a chance to take revenge, LV Yufan will devote my entire life to the Northern Xia Kingdom and be loyal to the Crown Prince forever. If the Crown Prince didn't fall, then the third prince wouldn't have a chance. Back then, he had only been deceived. Those two people were too powerful, and he had helped them make a wedding dress. Now that he had the chance to do it all over again, let's see if he didn't kill those two. Neither of them should even think about escaping. System, another bull that was willing to sell his life. Your Highness, I have a request. I hope you can send someone to look for my mother. LV Yufan's eyes were red and tears almost came out. He was not a child anymore. How could he cry in front of a girl? That would be too embarrassing. What's there to look for? Your mother is seriously injured and is still recuperating next door. If you want to see her, you can go now. LV Yufan, how did this woman get reborn? She's so powerful. People really can't be compared. He was reborn, but he was still a piece of fish. Now that she was reborn, it was a reversal of fate. System, this kid is stupid. Peak. Chapter 1497. After praising Tangua's prowess, LV Yufan didn't care that her head was still a little dizzy. She hurriedly got off the bed and went next door to check on Lin Yuexiang's condition. www. 250 Sayun Bushio had been waiting outside the whole time. When he saw the thin and pale LV Yufan following behind Tangua, he said, "Your body hasn't recovered yet. You should lie down and rest for 2 days." LV Yufan didn't recognize Yun Bushio, but at first glance, she knew that he wasn't a simple person. He remembered that Tangua had been reborn like him. Presumably, the other party had changed many things. It wasn't strange for this seemingly simple man to appear by her side. This is State Preceptor Yun Bushio. Not only is he good at divination, but his medical skills are also good. He was the one who treated your illness yesterday. Your mother was almost dead, but he was the one who saved her, Tangua explained to LV Yufan. Hearing this, LV Yufan hurriedly cupped her hands and bowed to Yun Bushio. Her face was full of gratitude. LV Yufan thanks State Preceptor for saving my life. No need to thank me. You should thank His Highness. Without His Highness's orders, I wouldn't have meddled in other people's business. Yun Bushio looked aloof and indifferent. Even Ing Zhu couldn't help but laugh. The State Preceptor was really a two-faced person. He tried to curry favor with His Highness, but in front of other people, he acted like an expert. Ing Zhu admired the speed at which he changed his face. Perhaps in one moment, he was asking about His Highness's well-being, but in the next moment, he was indifferent and unapproachable in front of these people. It could be seen that the State Preceptor really cared about His Highness. Unfortunately, he shouldn't have schemed against His Highness the first time they met. No matter how good he was now, if His Highness didn't want to do something, she, as a personal palace maid, wouldn't interfere with His Highness's choice. She only needed to serve His Highness well. LV Yufan was an intelligent person. She immediately understood what was going on. Yun Bushio looked at him with a cold expression, but when he said, "Your Highness," his tone and eyes instantly became gentle. He sighed again. She was indeed the favored princess. Her rebirth was like reaching the heavens in a single bound. Of course, he wasn't jealous. He just felt that fate was playing with people. Now that he was back, his mother wasn't dead, and his sister wasn't reduced to a prostitute. On the contrary, he was very glad that the first princess could be reborn. Otherwise, even if he was reborn at this time, he would not be able to do anything. With his young age, what could he possibly do? His mother couldn't be saved, and his sister's whereabouts were also unknown. Therefore, he should really thank the first princess. LV Yufan secretly swore in his heart that he would be loyal to Her Royal Highness the Princess for the rest of his life. He would also erase the mistakes he made in his previous life when he was bewitched by a scoundrel. Tangua felt the change in LV Yufan's eyes, but she didn't care. There was only one reason why she saved Lu Qing's family. She didn't want Lu Qing to lead a comfortable life. It wasn't because of righteousness, but because of her own selfish motives. System, but the host, invisibly, will always harvest some cows that are willing to help her plow the fields. After LV Yufan saw Lin Yuexiang, he really felt relieved. Although his mother's injuries were very serious, her life was saved. After 2 months of recuperation, she could still recover. It's fine as long as she's alive. Soon after, LV Yufan, with tears in his eyes, once again bowed 3 times to Tangua. "Your Highness, what do I need to do next?" His life was saved by her, so everything from now on should be arranged by her. He was perfectly willing. The Apex. Chapter 1498. Study hard. Tangua said, "Strive to be the top scorer as soon as possible." Okay. LV Yufan's eyes lit up. In his previous life, he relied on the books left behind by Lu Qing and the books that his grandfather found for him. In addition, with the appreciation of that rich young master, he also became the top scorer at a young age. Now that he had a second life, these were all familiar to him. After knowing the next path, LV Yufan listened to Yun Buxiu's words and went back to lie down and rest. Even if he wanted to take revenge, he had to do it step by step. The most important thing was to take care of his body. Your Majesty, who is he? Yun Buxiu saw that Tang Guo did not avoid him, so he asked. Tang Guo replied, this child is called LV Yufan, the little girl inside is called LV Yuji, and the heavily injured woman is called Lin Yuexiang. They are Lu Qing's wife and son. Yun Buxiu was slightly stunned, and his expression was also a little surprised. Which Lu Qing? State Preceptor, do you think there is another Lu Qing? So, he hid the fact that he has a wife and son and became the prince consort. Yun Buxiu indeed did not guess this, because Lu Qing was the top scorer. To be able to stand out among so many scholars, it could be seen that his ability was not small. In Bei Xia country, if one became the prince consort, he would not be able to enter the imperial court as an official. An ambitious man would definitely not give up the opportunity to be promoted and become a prince consort with no real power. This Lu Qing was really different from other people, and the path he chose was also different. Then what happened yesterday? Yun Buxiu had already thought of why the three mother and son were in such a sorry state. The three of them planned to enter the imperial city to look for Lu Qing. Do you think Lu Qing would be willing to let them look for him? Once this matter was exposed, even 10 heads would not be enough for him to lose. Yun Buxiu said, that person is really vicious. The most vicious is yet to come. Imperial Preceptor, just watch. Whatever happens next may overturn your outlook on life. Tang Guo said with a smile. Yun Buxiu was only a little curious about what happened next. What he was most curious about was that the princess seemed to be in control of everything, as if there was nothing in the world that she did not know. Even the matter of that Lu Qing wanting to enter the crop field and steal seeds, this one is also very clear. In the end, he worked himself to death for 3 months in vain. The stolen seeds had long since been disseminated among the common people. It was said that Lu Qing's complexion was very bad at that time, and he even fell ill. Previously, he had divined the fate of the northern summer country. The northern summer country's fate, which was supposed to be declining, was actually gradually flourishing. As for how much they could prosper, no matter how capable he was, he couldn't see that far. Vaguely, he had a feeling that as long as the princess of the northern summer country was alive, the northern summer country would not decline. 7 years' time was neither long nor short, but she had brought about earth-shaking changes to the northern summer country. And she was not greedy for power. No wonder the whole country, and even the emperor, was willing to give her a special honor. As for the crown prince, he was a siscon. When the crown prince was around, he could forget about talking to the princess. Originally, the crown prince was still respectful to him, but because of him, the crown prince had moved next to the princess' residence. Every time the crown prince saw him, he would speak to him in a strange tone, as if he owed him 5 million taels of silver. Your Highness, do you want to return directly to the imperial city in a few days? Yun Buxiu thought that there were 3 more people now, so he asked. The Peak. Chapter 1499. We've only been out for less than a month. Why are we going back? Of course, we're going to continue playing. What about the 3 of them? Bring them along. Tang Guo's gaze landed on Yun Buxiu's face. State Preceptor is knowledgeable and talented. That LV Yufan is a good seedling. I'll have to trouble you to keep an eye on him along the way and give him pointers if you can. And that LV Yuji is a girl. I think she can learn medicine. Is State Preceptor willing? System, make use of everything you can. I'm willing. Of course, Yun Bushio would not refuse. He had many doubts in his heart. It could be seen that she did not intend to tell him. He did not ask any more. Whatever she wanted to do, he would help her. As long as she was satisfied and happy, it was fine. LV Yuji was the second to wake up. When she woke up, she looked dazed. Tang Guo looked at her and knew that she was a real child. There was no rebirth. LV Yufan comforted her for a long time. She even said that Lin Yuexiang was fine. Only then did the little girl's eyes recover. Brother, where are those bad people? Why did they chase after us and almost kill Mother? Dang! Lin Yuexiang knew that if they continued to run, the three of them would die. When they passed by a slope, she ruthlessly pushed the two children down. Whether or not he could survive was up to fate. If they fell into the hands of those people, they would not have any chance of survival. At that time, it was raining heavily and the sky was gradually darkening. Those people might not have seen her actions. But her running figure would easily attract their attention. She did succeed. Those people did not notice the two children rolling down the slope. Those bad people have been caught. Seeing that LV Yufan did not know what to say, Tang Guo straightforwardly said, "As for why they want to kill you, it's because they were ordered to eliminate the roots to prevent future trouble." LV Yufan stared blankly at Tang Guo. It was already too late to stop her. Who sent them? LV Yuji asked. Her beautiful big eyes looked at Tang Guo. Pretty sister, can you tell me who wants to kill me, my brother, and my mother? Your father. LV Yufan was speechless. If the little girl knew about this, she was afraid that she would be traumatized. Tang Guo glanced at him and said, "I think what happened to you before is enough to leave a terrible impression on your sister. Why don't you tell her everything? Let her accept it as soon as possible. She will face it sooner or later anyway." Daddy, why do you want to kill us? Sure enough, when LV Yuji heard this, tears uncontrollably flowed out. Because your father hid the fact that he had a wife and a child to become the princess's son-in-law for the sake of glory and wealth. LV Yufan no longer tried to stop him. You're right. You'll have to face it sooner or later. Lu Qing wasn't a good person. If he gave his sister the impression that Lu Qing was a good person, it would hinder his revenge in the future. They had just been hunted down. At this time, knowing that Lu Qing was the one behind all this, his sister should not have any hope for Lu Qing anymore. After Tang Guo finished speaking, she left with a smile on her face. She left the crying LV Yuji to LV Yufan to comfort. Her expression made LV Yufan think that she was deliberately looking for trouble for him. System, little scholar LV is really smart. Host did it on purpose. A few days later, Lin Yuexiang also woke up. Tang Guo repeated what Lu Qing did in front of Lin Yuexiang. Peak. Chapter 1500. LV Yufan felt as if there was nothing left to live for. He already understood that this was the princess taking revenge for a personal grudge. Lin Yuexiang had already expected that Lu Qing would have a change of heart. It wasn't difficult for her to accept the matter regarding the princess. When she heard that the person who wanted to kill her was also Lu Qing, she said in a daze, "Lin Yuexiang, have never done anything to let him down. Everything I did was for his future. I gave birth to children for him and never let him spend any effort. In the end, he was afraid of losing his head and actually wanted my life." Lin Yuexiang didn't cry, but her face was very numb. LV Yuji pursed her lips and held her hand as if she wanted to cry. LV Yufan also looked at her anxiously and comforted her softly. Lin Yuexiang regained her senses and looked at her two obedient children. She said in a low voice, your father abandoned the three of us for glory and wealth. Now, because he's afraid of death, he wants our lives. Yufan, Yuji, mother can't take this lying down. I still want to go to the Imperial City. Even if I have to sue until the end of time, I will drag Lu Qing down from his high position. Mother, why don't we listen to what the eldest princess has to say? Our lives were saved by this one. Lin Yuexiang reacted and quickly thanked Tanghua. She said, I don't dare to ask for justice for this commoner. I only ask that this commoner has a chance to do so. After I sue Lu Qing, this commoner is willing to serve you. Host, you're a straightforward person with upright values. You actually didn't ask for help to take revenge for her. The system was a little surprised. It thought that Lin Yuexiang would directly ask the host to help her. Her character was similar to LV Yufan's. They both wanted to have a chance to take revenge. They didn't want the host to help. A woman who can give up herself at a critical moment and push two children down the mountain is very rare in this era. Lin Yuexiang has a straightforward character. I have already expected this. I didn't come all the way here to save them in vain. If they could not be helped, she would rather watch them walk towards their original fate. I don't need you to serve me. Lin Yuexiang hesitated for a moment, then asked, what requests do your majesty have? This humble woman will do her best to fulfill them. Even though she knew that the high and mighty princess didn't care at all, she still said those words with sincerity. The reason why I'm helping you is because Lu Qing provoked me. Lin Yuexiang had heard of this princess's name before and had always admired her. This was the role model for all the women in the northern summer country. Did you know that the person Lu Qing wanted to scheme against was me? It's just that I was lucky enough to avoid it. Lin Yuexiang's expression was indescribable. It was her parents' orders and the matchmaker's words. Back then, she had only heard that Lu Qing was a scholar with good talent and good looks. Other than being poor and having sick parents, everything else was good. She got married. Not long after she got married, her parents-in-law passed away. She handled the funeral single-handedly. Other than the first month, she and Lu Qing rarely spoke. After giving birth to LV Yufan, she had to take care of the child and take care of the family. The two of them communicated even less. So she didn't know much about Lu Qing. She didn't expect him to be so shameless and do such a disgusting thing. I support you in suing Lu Qing and taking his dog life. But before that, you need to change your appearance and grow to the point where Lu Qing will be shocked. The Peak. Chapter 1501. Lin Yuexiang didn't understand why the noble princess would spend so much effort to change her. Along the way, they traveled, recited poems, and painted. They also ordered people to take care of her body and even take care of her skin, which had slowly begun to age. As for her son and daughter, they both became Yun Bushio's in-name disciples. Her son learned divination and the knowledge of the world, while her daughter learned medicine from Yun Bushio. Of course, she had the most important task. She had to take care of her body, skin, and learn the 4 arts. It was 100 times harder than plowing the fields and sowing seeds. She was already in her 30s, and her brain couldn't keep up with young people. But she didn't refuse to learn these things. She always knew that Lu Qing was a talented person. She could more or less feel that he looked down on her. If she had time, she would also like to learn some calligraphy and painting to cultivate her body. But she had to take care of her family and Lu Qing. How could she have time to discuss poetry and painting with him? She didn't expect that after surviving a disaster, she would have such an opportunity to change. She vaguely understood the princess's thoughts. Could it be that she wanted the changed her to appear in front of Lu Qing and surprise him? Perhaps this was the noble princess's interest. Moreover, her son encouraged her. Every day, the two little ones praised her for becoming prettier. When she communicated with her son, there seemed to be more topics to talk about. She became more interested. She could also tell the stories in the ancient books to her son and daughter. Lin Yuexiang felt that she really wasted a lot of time, so she worked even harder to learn. Tang Guo was very happy to see the three mother and son so active. Yun Buxiu was still puzzled. Why was she so happy when the three of them changed so much? If I'm not satisfied with Lu Qing, I have many reasons to make him lose his head. Just the fact that the other party colluded with the third prince and secretly wanted to rebel was enough to make Lu Qing suffer. Tang Guo withdrew her gaze from Lin Yuexiang, who was playing the piano. She narrowed her eyes and said, "Life is too long. We have to find something more interesting. Lu Qing is too disgusting. I don't think it's enough to just kill him. Then, in your opinion, what should we do to vent our anger?" Slowly. Slowly, step by step, let him lose what he has. Tang Guo tilted her head and said with a smile, "Second royal sister returned to the princess mansion with a gigolo in front of him. Don't you think he feels bad? Of course it's uncomfortable. That vulgar woman whom he once looked down on suddenly turned into a talented woman with exceptional looks. He actually failed to recognize her and chased after her for several days, but to no avail. He only found out about the other party's identity at the very last moment. Don't you think he was upset?" Yun Buxiu's lips twitched. LV Yufan, who was sitting opposite him and watching the game of chess, almost flipped the whole chessboard. This princess was really eccentric after her rebirth. She did whatever she wanted. Sigh, it was Lu Qing's fault. He cheated her feelings and in the end, he even turned the tables on her. Not only that, he even killed her biological brother and caused the death of her empress mother. In the end, he joined forces with the third prince to destroy her imperial father. How could she not hate such a person? This was simply a deep-seated hatred. He also felt that just killing Lu Qing was not enough to vent his hatred. It was a brilliant plan. Yun Buxiu was a little stunned. The Peak. Chapter 1502. It turned out that taking revenge on someone could be so deliberate that the other party would die with grievances. At that time, Yun Buxiu was thinking that if she used all her heart to love someone, wouldn't that person be very happy? State Preceptor. Tang Guo called out when she saw Yun Buxiu's stunned expression. Yun Buxiu was still lost in his own thoughts, as if he didn't hear her. State Preceptor, what are you thinking about? Why are you so engrossed? Perhaps it was because Yun Buxiu was used to answering her honestly, so he subconsciously said, "I was thinking, if your highness were to deliberately treat someone well and love them well, how happy would that person be?" LV Yufan, is it really okay for the state preceptor to do this? At least on the surface, he still looked like a child. Before Tang Guo could reply, Yun Buxiu realized that he couldn't take back his words. He met her smiling gaze and hurriedly said, "Your Highness, please don't misunderstand. Buxiu is already very satisfied to be able to follow your Highness and be your Highness' neighbor. State Preceptor, do you think I don't treat you well?" Yun Buxiu didn't even think before replying, "Your Highness treats me very well." It's good that State Preceptor understands. Look, other than my personal palace maid, Ing Zhu, and those attendants, where would I go with others? State Preceptor invites me to a meal every time. Didn't I go to your residence? If there's anything new, I didn't instruct anyone to call you. System, facepalm, the host is getting even. Tang Guo looked at LV Yufan with a greedy expression. LV Yufan was speechless. Tang Guo looked at LV Yufan. Then he thought of his previous life. Could it be that the princess was traumatized by Lu Qing and didn't intend to love anyone in this life? LV Yufan looked at Yun Buxiu with sympathy. Yun Bushio, your highness is indeed very good to Bushio. The state preceptor is really forgetful. I'm so good to you, but you still want me to love you. You're too greedy. No, Bushio is really satisfied. I won't let my imagination run wild anymore. For some reason, Yun Bushio felt his hair stand on end when he heard her say that he was greedy. System, that's a restriction. This guy is really something. Each restriction is more powerful than the last. In just 1 year, Lin Yuexiang had undergone earth-shattering changes. Even if she wore a plain dress, it was difficult to conceal her temperament. Now, anyone who saw her would not associate her with the vulgar village woman who raised children at home and farmed vegetables. Her skin became snow-white, and she could even speak eloquently. LV Yufan was much more knowledgeable than in her previous life. As for LV Yuji, she was already able to diagnose patients on her own. Along the way, many of the volunteer medical consultations were done by her. She even obtained the title of Little Divine Doctor. During this period, Tang Guo also arranged for the three of them to practice martial arts. Lin Yuexiang originally thought that practicing martial arts was a waste of time, so it was better to practice calligraphy and read books. Then, Tang Guo gave her a reason that she could not refuse, so she happily went to practice martial arts. This reason was, when you see Lu Qing in the future, you have a unique skill. You can send him flying with 2 slaps. Does that feel good? Lin Yuexiang was stunned at that time. When she came back to her senses, her eyes lit up and she only said, yes. Her Highness the eldest princess was indeed the woman she admired the most. This reason for practicing martial arts was very good. She had long wanted to beat Lu Qing. She must beat his little white face into a pig's head. Thus, among the three of them, Lin Yuexiang was the one who practiced martial arts the most seriously. Your Highness, you really are omnipotent. You actually asked people to carve Lu Qing's name on the wooden stakes. Now that my mother is practicing martial arts with all her might every day, many of the wooden stakes have already been broken. LV Yufan said helplessly. Tang Guo was all smiles as she said that Lu Qing is very shameless. Isn't it because I want Yuexiang to learn more skills so that she won't be at a disadvantage when dealing with Lu Qing in the future? System, the host's reasons have always been sufficient. Look at Lin Yuexiang's energetic appearance. Chapter 1503. Tang Guo traveled outside for 3 years. In these 3 years, she brought Lin Yuexiang and her son to see the world, which broadened their horizons. LV Yufan died early in his previous life. He was almost 16 years old when he became the top scholar. When he died, he was 17 years old. He was not even 18 years old when he was killed by Lu Qing. Half of his life was spent in the village. He leaned against the wall made of mud and carefully flipped through the books that were already worn out. The remaining half of his time was spent thinking about how to take revenge. Even though he read a lot of books in order to pass the imperial examinations. Most of the books he read were for the sake of passing the imperial examinations. At such a young age, he did not really understand the world. It turned out that it was so magnificent. If it was in his previous life, when he was older, more experienced and more knowledgeable, he would not have believed that the eldest princess was the one who did those things just because of Lu Qing's words. He would not have been used by Lu Qing to create a tragedy for all of them. 3 years had passed and the three of them had changed a lot. LV Yufan was becoming more and more mature, and LV Yuji had also changed her habit of crying at every turn. Her innate talent was not bad, and she had even learned the ability to bring people back to life from Yun Bushio. She was truly worthy of the title of Little Divine Doctor. Along the way, LV Yuji was the one who treated those who were seriously ill. As for Lin Yuexiang, not only did she diligently study poetry, calligraphy, and various kinds of needlework, but she was also obsessed with beauty and martial arts. Wherever she went, she would be praised as a pretty lady who knew martial arts. As for Tangua, she was basically inspecting the environment, temperature, soil, and recording everything. When she returned, she would start to cultivate crops that did not grow in the environment. They had also been to other small countries and brought back many crops that did not exist in Baixia country. During this period, LV Yufan went to participate in various examinations. He also practiced martial arts, and with his good physical strength, even if it was a long journey, it did not affect him at all. Seeing that there were still a few months before the next imperial examination, Tangguo was prepared to end this trip and bring LV Yufan back to participate in the imperial examination. The three of them had changed greatly. Even if they were in front of Lu Qing, he might not believe that they were his wife and children. Lin Yuexiang, in particular, had the demeanor of a master. In the later years, she also learned from Tangguo how to cultivate all kinds of seeds. She already knew how to do this, so it was even easier for her to learn. When Tangguo asked her if she wanted to find another conscience after the matter with Lu Qing was settled, Gu Changel didn't say anything. Lin Yuexiang smiled faintly and said, "Your Highness, may I ask, why aren't you getting married?" "I don't want to get married. It's good to be free like this," Tangguo said without thinking. Lin Yuexiang noticed that Yun Buxiu, who was not far away, had a disappointed look on her face. She couldn't help but smile and said, "Yuexiang also thinks that it's good to be free. In this era, when a woman gets married, there will be many restrictions. The woman that Yuexiang admires the most is Your Highness. Your Highness can be called a role model for women. You let Yuexiang understand that even if a woman doesn't get married, she will still live a good life. I'm also very grateful that Your Highness has set such a role model for all the women in the world. With Your Highness around, women will not be mocked if they don't get married. So, you are not willing, right?" Chapter 1504. Yuexiang thinks that the current situation is very good. Our children are sensible and obedient, and have become successful. What's the point of finding a man to talk about? To have me serve them every day. In your dreams. In this world, you can't find many men like State Preceptor. Tangguo smiled lightly. Him. He's my neighbor. He's quite a good person. State Preceptor cares about Your Highness. Lin Yuexiang said. Has Your Highness never considered it? With him. Get married. Tangguo smiled faintly. He cares about me. Do I have to be with him? Yuexiang, that doesn't make sense. I don't want to get married. Even if someone dies for me and forces me, I still don't want to get married. Yun Buxiu silently hid in a corner and felt sad. Therefore, he should be a good neighbor with Her Highness. He should just follow her and protect her. She was right. He was the one who was moved first. She had no obligation to respond. He was even the one who shamelessly followed her. He couldn't tie her to be with him just because of his infatuation and shamelessness. There was no such logic in this world. Just because you like someone infatuatedly, they didn't have to be with you. As expected, Your Highness is the woman that Yuexiang admires the most. Yuexiang can't compare to Your Highness, but I really want to follow in Your Highness' footsteps. Lin Yuexiang's face seemed to have a very bright light, dazzling and enchanting. She was clearly in her 30s, but her smile was like that of a young girl. Her cheeks were white, her eyes were beautiful, and her long black hair was let down. Lin Yuexiang said that she wouldn't comb her hair in the future. From the day that Lu Qing betrayed her and wanted to take her life, she was no longer Lu Qing's wife. She was only herself. She was Lin Yuexiang, herself. Who said that a married woman should follow her husband? She, Lin Yuexiang, was a living person. Why should she listen to the words of a heartless and unscrupulous person? She wanted to be like Her Highness. She wanted to live a dazzling life. Not only did she want to live a dazzling life, but she also wanted to do things as a woman that countless men in the world couldn't do. Alright, since you've decided, I'll support you. Tang Guo was quite happy with Lin Yuexiang's choice. Perhaps, Lin Yuexiang would start a new era in Beixiao. Since she was bored, she would give the other party a chance to see how far she could go. Let's go back to the Imperial City. In the future, you will be in charge of the matters under me. The corners of Tang Guo's lips rose as she ordered with a smile. Lin Yuexiang was pleasantly surprised. Tang Guo continued, you were originally a farmer's girl, so you should have a better understanding of all kinds of crops. You're quite smart. With your participation, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Your Highness, for giving me this opportunity. If you can achieve a different result, I will ask Imperial Father to make you an official. What do you think? Lin Yuexiang almost fell to the ground. Wasn't this a little too exciting? She just wanted to live a different life and participate in the things she wanted to do. She really didn't want to enter the imperial court as an official. Although she didn't think that she was inferior to those men, it was really rare for a daughter to enter the imperial court as an official. Even in history, there weren't many people like this. It was really exciting, but she really wanted to. Alright, Yuexiang definitely won't disappoint Your Highness. At this moment, Lin Yuexiang had a different ambition. What kind of scene would it be to be able to stand in the imperial court and become an official with a group of men? Just thinking about it made her excited. Chapter 1505. Especially her son, who was about to take the imperial examinations. In the future, would there be a time when the two of them, mother and son, would stand together? Lin Yuexiang was so excited that she was about to faint. Her life was really getting more and more exciting. Thank you, His Highness, for showing her a different world. Women didn't have to revolve around their father and children. They could also rely on their own talents to do what men did. In fact, she could even do it better. Yun Buxiu could feel that Lin Yuexiang was different in that instant. 3 years ago, when he saw Lin Yuexiang, she was just a village woman who was filled with anger and only wanted to seek justice and punish Lu Qing. Before Tang Guo said those words, Lin Yuexiang was just a woman who had changed after 3 years. She didn't look like an ordinary woman. Now, Lin Yuexiang truly had her own soul. She was no longer the person who only wanted to sue Lu Qing. She had a goal, a pursuit, and her own open life. She might even have a meteoric rise in the future. And suing Lu Qing was just a small matter in her life. The person who changed all of this was the person he couldn't wait to hold in the palm of his hand. He loved her dearly. He loved her smile, her voice, and everything about her, including her coldness and heartlessness. He even found her mocking and ridiculing to be very cute. He must have gone crazy or been poisoned. There was no cure in the world. It seemed that he couldn't find anything about her that he didn't like. Putting aside the fact that she didn't want to marry him, she was actually very good to him. How good was she? So good that he thought that she would agree to marry him in the next moment. But he knew that it was an illusion. In this life, they couldn't be husband and wife. He didn't complain at all. He only felt lucky. Lucky that he was so persistent that he could stay by her side, look at her, like her, and experience her good points. She was already so dazzling. She could actually make another woman who was stuck in a quagmire become so dazzling. This was her ability. The woman he liked was extraordinary. State Preceptor. Yun Buxiu was awakened by Tang Guo's voice and returned to her senses. Your Highness. You're distracted. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking about your highness, Yun Bushio said bluntly, not hiding his thoughts at all. Not getting married didn't mean that he couldn't confess his feelings. And she didn't seem to be disgusted by such things. What do you want me to do? It's because your highness is too good. The more I think about it, the more I fall in love with you. System, damn it, so mushy. Your image of this man has collapsed again. Cloud invisibility, I don't know this person. He's not my young master. He must have been possessed by some evil spirit. State Preceptor, when I first met you, you were at least a calm and collected expert. How did you become so glib and indecent after more than 10 years? Could it be that when an expert falls into the mortal world, he can also be contaminated by the mortal world? The mortal world cannot disturb me. Only your highness can. System, oh my god. I can't take it. He thought that if the two of them didn't get married, he wouldn't eat her. How could he forget that even if they didn't get married and weren't together, there would still be dog food? State Preceptor, you've changed. I've changed for your highness. I'm willing to do so. As long as your highness doesn't mind, I won't stop nagging. Tangua sat at the side with a smile and said, State Preceptor, you have another skill. Chapter 1506. What skill? In addition to divining the weather, I also know how to cure diseases. Now, I can even speak to make people happy. Yun Bun was happy after hearing this. Does your highness think it's good or bad? Of course it's good. If it can make people happy, then it's good. Who doesn't want to hear it? Then I'll say it to your highness every day, okay? Tangua smiled and said, aren't you afraid of tiring your tongue? As long as your highness is willing to listen, my endless tongue will never be tired. System, no, I'm so full. Yun Bun, too full. Ingju, can I not listen? Alas, it was because she saw the State Preceptor's feelings for her highness that she ruined her life. Now, she couldn't help but compare every man to the State Preceptor. It wasn't that these men were bad, but she didn't agree with many of their views. For example, the scholars here all believed that women should help their husbands and raise their children. Many of them thought that the more sons they had, the better. Poor men might only be willing to marry her and not take concubines. That was because they were poor and couldn't afford to raise them. She was the personal maid of the first princess, so why should she marry such a person and waste her life? Rich men, children of small officials, had more rules. As the head wife, she had to give birth to a son to stabilize her position. Regardless of whether she could give birth to a son, these men would definitely take concubines. At this age, there must be several bedwarmers. She was also envious of a couple who could be together forever. Both of them liked each other and had children together. When their feelings reached a certain level, they would happily get married and raise children together for the rest of their lives. Even if she was the head maid of the first princess, her status wasn't low and she could marry into a good family. In these years, there were many people who wanted to marry her. But she didn't want to live such a life. Since her highness was in front of her, she was more willing to serve her highness. Why should she live such an uncomfortable life? Like now, she was traveling around. If she really got married, she would never be able to take a step out of the imperial city. How could she see the beauty of this world? Spending all day in the house, fighting for affection and scheming against each other. Just the thought of such a life was incomparably vexing. Since she had a choice, she would naturally choose the most comfortable day. My young lord wasn't like this before. He used to be a man of few words and was indifferent to outsiders. He wasn't like this at all. Even I can't describe him. Cloud Village looked at Ingju's complicated expression and couldn't help but chime in. Ingju came back to her senses and said, His Highness has always been like this, and I think it's very good. His Highness' way of thinking can't be wrong. Cloud Village, how are we supposed to talk about this? There's no common topic at all. She's a girl who's protective of her master. Your Highness is indeed a rare woman, so it's not surprising that young master fell into your Highness' hands. Cloud Village continued. Inju said proudly, naturally, not to mention the northern summer country, even in the surrounding countries, would you be able to find a girl more outstanding than my Highness? He has a noble status, is full of talent, and cares about the common people. Who can compare to him? Cloud, are you that confident? But thinking about it, it seemed to be the case. If young master can marry her Highness, he will definitely be very happy. Ingju was unhappy. My Highness said that he would never get married in this lifetime. If anyone forces her, she will definitely throw them out. Chapter 1507. Then I'm sorry for your infatuation. So what if I'm infatuated? Does Her Highness have to marry anyone who is infatuated with her? You're really a blockhead, you're not even half as good as your young master. No wonder you're not young anymore, you're not favored by girls. It turns out that your brain is not good. It's really tiring to talk to you. Ingju coldly snorted and turned away. Cloud, what is this? Isn't he just looking for a topic to talk about? Sure enough, the maids around Her Highness the Grand Princess are also difficult to please. He can't learn from his young master, shamelessly following a woman every day and saying all kinds of sweet words. He, Cloud, likes idle clouds and wild cranes, he doesn't like romantic relationships. Although he is already 30 years old, he still hasn't held a girl's hand, but that's because he doesn't want to. If he wants to, there are many girls who are willing to be held by him. The next day, the group set off to return to the imperial city. During this period, when passing through various towns, Ingju would always buy local snacks and bring them to the carriage. Cloud subconsciously followed her, apparently forgetting that he thought about it yesterday. He won't shamelessly follow her every day. Why are you following me? This is a remote town, you're a girl, what if something happens to you? Cloud looked at Ingju's suspicious eyes and quickly said, if something happens to you, Her Highness will definitely be sad, and when Her Highness is sad, won't young master be even more sad? So, in order to not be sad, I have to protect you well. Well, you can follow me. Cloud, I'm telling you, I'm not interested in people like you, don't think too much. Come on, Ingju, you're almost 30 years old, I don't like people like you. If I like someone, I'll definitely like someone young and beautiful. Ingju was angry, what women are most afraid of is being called old, get out of here. I won't. Tanguo lifted the curtain of the carriage and just happened to see the two arguing. She couldn't help but smile, of course, it was just a smile. Between Ingju and Cloud, she never thought of intervening. Let nature take its course. If they are destined to be together, then they will be together. If not, then there's no need to force it. As long as she is here, Ingju's life will not be bad. After 2 months, the group returned to the imperial city. LV Yufan started to get busy. She started to prepare for the exam and spent the whole day reading books. Lin Yuexiang, on the other hand, was thrown to the crop field by Tanguo, and she was put in charge of the matters under her. Whether or not Lin Yuexiang could convince the masses would depend on the other party's ability. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter well, then when he became an official in the future, wouldn't he be suppressed by others? Lin Yuexiang did not disappoint her. On the first day, the people at the farm site were very dissatisfied with the appearance of such a beautiful woman and the fact that she had taken over such an important task. However, what Lin Yuexiang did next left them convinced. Not only was this woman beautiful, but she was also very knowledgeable about crops. Her words were clear and logical, and her words were eloquent. She also knew how to draw. The maps of the fields that she drew were really good, and the new ideas that she came up with were all very useful. His Highness was the one who found him, and he had the ability, so they naturally had to respect him. Lin Yuexiang's problem was solved. Next was LV Yuji. Tanghua asked her what she wanted to do. The little girl said, "Your Highness, Yuji wants to open a medical center." Every time Yuji thinks of the serious illness after being drenched in the rain, Yuji thinks of treating the illness and saving people. Chapter 1508. Alright, you can open a medical center. Try to spread the reputation of the medical center and attract the attention of my father and mother. When the time comes, I'll give you a plaque. Thank you, Your Highness. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. The eldest princess, Tanghua, was the most free. She drank tea every day, ate some snacks, and listened to the state preceptor's praises. Her days were really comfortable, making others envious and jealous. The system wished it could transform into a human and experience what Tanghua had experienced. The first to make an achievement was LV Yuji. In 3 days, the medical center was opened. The first time, there was no business. Later, she thought of a way, which was to see patients for free within 10 days. Sure enough, some poor families came looking for them. They had no choice but to do so. In particular, the young doctor in the medical center was in his teens. This made them feel uneasy, but they were reluctant to leave. They could only give it a try. They didn't expect LV Yuji to become famous after her diagnosis. Then, there was an endless stream of people who came to her for treatment. In just 10 days, she had the title of Little Divine Doctor in the Imperial City. After everything returned to normal, there were countless people who asked her for treatment. There was no lack of officials and nobles. This caused the other medical centers to be dissatisfied and prepared to teach this young lady a lesson. LV Yuji and the others didn't follow Tanghua for nothing. Although they were young, they had a lot of thoughts. They weren't the kind of young lady who could be easily manipulated. The people from the other medical centers couldn't get any benefits, so they wanted to use the people behind them to pressure her. Before they could pressure her, they heard that the eldest princess had gone to LV Yuji's medical center and was talking and laughing with her. The more specific news was that the two of them knew each other. This medical center seemed to be sponsored by the eldest princess. At that time, those who wanted to mess with LV Yuji completely gave up. Could they afford to offend her? They couldn't afford to offend her. They could only run. They hoped that the eldest princess wouldn't hold a grudge against them for what happened previously. LV Yuji didn't complain. She even said that she couldn't let the other medical centers have no business. She said that she would only take 20 patients a day in the future. When the other medical centers saw this, they all felt ashamed that they couldn't be compared to a young lady. Tanghua liked to sit behind the curtain of the clinic and watch LV Yuji treat patients. Recently, she was really bored. He still needed some time to deal with Lu Qing. Both Lin Yuexiang and LV Yufan had to spend some time to be effective. They had to do it step by step. They couldn't rush it. Otherwise, it would be meaningless and they wouldn't be able to hurt each other. On this day, LV Yuji had already diagnosed 20 patients and was preparing to close the clinic. In fact, the patients in the clinic were already waiting for 3 days. Moreover, she had limited the number of customers to 3 days in advance. Otherwise, the business would be closed. Tanghua also planned to walk out from behind the curtain and take LV Yuji back to the princess residence. At this moment, a person suddenly rushed into the clinic from outside. When he saw LV Yuji, he grabbed her and said, "I'm fine. Little godly doctor, please come with me." LV Yuji knew martial arts. She casually pushed his hand down and said with a serious expression, "What's the matter? If you want to be treated, please line up. If you can't wait, go to other medical centers. Those old doctors are all capable people. Second Prince Consort said that this matter has to be done by the little godly doctor. Little godly doctor, come with me. After the treatment, Second Prince Consort will definitely reward you greatly. Second Prince Consort. LV Yuji's gaze deepened. She even turned around and forgot about Tanguo behind the curtain. In the end, she smiled and said, I'm sorry, please line up. No matter what kind of horse you are, you have to line up. Chapter 1509. Seeing that LV Yuji was unmoved, the manservant couldn't help but feel a little angry. He straightened his back and said arrogantly, Little divine doctor, you have to think clearly. I'm someone sent by the Second Prince Consort and I'm inviting you with good intentions. The Second Prince Consort invited you because he thinks highly of you. You're letting down the Second Prince Consort. He lowered his voice. Do you not want to stay in the Imperial City anymore? This small medical center had Tangua's shadow behind it, and it only spread among the medical centers. With Lu Qing's current status, if he wasn't sick or in pain, how could he care about a small medical center in the Imperial City? Moreover, this medical center was more than 10 streets away from the second princess residence. It was very far away. Naturally, Lu Qing and this manservant didn't know that LV Yuji's medical center was supported by Tanguo. And Tanguo had only really appeared once. The citizens of the Imperial City respected and feared her, and didn't dare to casually talk about her. They were afraid that if they said something bad, a die-hard fan of the eldest princess would suddenly appear and point at them and scold them. Now in the Imperial City, whether it was the local scholars or the scholars who came to participate in the examination, their dream fairy was the eldest princess. She could only be seen from afar and could not be touched. They had once thought that no one in the entire world was worthy of her. I didn't cause trouble in the Imperial City. I did my duty by opening a medical center to treat illnesses and save people. I also didn't do anything outrageous. Why can't I stay in the Imperial City? LV Yuji wasn't afraid at all. As she grew older, she remembered the bitter days when her mother took care of her and her brother when they were young. On the way to find Lu Qing, they were chased by the people sent by Lu Qing. Her mother had tears in her eyes and gritted her teeth as she personally pushed her and her brother down the hill in pain and despair. Her small body was drenched in the rain as she rolled down the hill. Stones, weeds, and bushes scratched her skin and face in pain. She clearly remembered the pain of catching a cold and having a high fever. What was Lu Qing? Other than the fact that he was related to her by blood, he was just a cruel and unscrupulous person. He was clearly a poor scholar who clung to the nobles and came from a poor background. Now, he was using his identity as the second prince consort to do whatever he wanted in the Imperial City. Little divine doctor, second prince consort really can't wait any longer. I'll have to trouble you to go over and take a look. When the manservant saw that he could not threaten LV Yuji, he thought that it was better to trick her over and treat second prince consort first. Once second prince consort recovered, he would settle this matter with her. LV Yuji's heart stirred. Tell me first, what happened to second prince consort? I accidentally fell while riding a horse and broke my leg. It looks a little serious. Little divine doctor, come with me quickly. When the servant heard LV Yuji's question, he thought that there was a chance. In truth, she didn't know. LV Yuji only wanted to know if Lu Qing was unlucky. When she heard that Lu Qing had broken his leg while riding a horse, she almost clapped her hands in joy. Retribution, this was retribution. I can't go with you. I made a promise with the other medical centers that I will only diagnose 20 patients a day. In 2 days, there will be a new round of queues. If you can wait, send someone to snatch the number earlier. When I first came to the imperial city, I must fulfill the promise that I made. A gentleman's words cannot be taken back. Even if I'm a woman, I don't want to go back on my words. If you can't wait, it's still the same as before. Go and find the old doctor from the other medical centers. When the manservant saw this, he gritted his teeth and quickly rushed over to pull LoveLore. Chapter 15:10. From his point of view, this girl was delicate and weak and was only in her teens. Today, he had to carry the winner back and treat the second prince consort first. However, LoveLore was trained in martial arts and easily dodged it. She even casually gave him a slap and pushed him out of the door, closing it in an instant. Her voice rang out, "I've already said that I've finished treating the 20 patients today. Go and find other doctors." The manservant had no choice. The second prince consort was still waiting, so he could only go and find other doctors. LoveLore stood behind the door. After a long time, she said, "Your Highness, I'm a little happy." "I'm also very happy." Tanguo walked out from the back and greeted LoveLore. "Yuji, come and eat some desserts to celebrate." LoveLore hurriedly ran to Tanguo's side and found a place to sit down. She picked up a dessert and fiercely bit into it, swallowing it in a few bites. "Your Highness, this is retribution. Lu Qing actually broke his leg. I'm not going to treat him. I'm afraid that if I treat him to death, Your Highness won't be satisfied." Tanguo nodded. "If you treat him to death, my later plans will be useless. I really won't be satisfied. So, I'd better not do anything. I'll just bear with it." LoveLore propped up her small chin. "I just don't know if his leg is serious. I hope it's serious." Tanguo's thoughts moved as she silently recalled the plot. She said, "It should be quite serious. Tongzi, I remember that Lu Qing should have suffered a serious fall this time. In the end, he was treated by a traveling doctor, right?" "That's right, the great host was a traveling doctor who came from an unknown place. Then I'll have to send a few people to watch over him. Once that traveling doctor appears, I'll capture him and bring him to the clinic." Tanguo narrowed her eyes. In this clinic, there was only one girl, LoveLore, and a few servants. There were indeed not many people. The two chatted for a while before returning to the princess's residence from the back door. The second princess's residence caused a bigger commotion. Lu Qing's broken leg also attracted Tang Xi's attention. She didn't care about Lu Qing's injuries as long as he didn't die. With Lu Qing, her signature prince consort, her days were actually very comfortable. No one cared about her, so it wasn't as bad as she had imagined. Of course, as long as she didn't run into her royal sister, everything would be fine. "How is the prince consort's leg?" Tang Xi asked the old doctor who was frowning. The old doctor quickly stood up and bowed before saying, "Your Highness the second princess, the second prince consort's injury is very serious and has already injured his bones. This commoner can only help the second prince consort stop the pain, but is unable to help the second prince consort's leg recover, so, you mean, he's crippled?" Tang Xi asked nonchalantly. "If there is a doctor with good medical skills, there may be a chance." The old doctor was more tactful. After all, he couldn't understand Tang Xi's words. Tang Xi said, "Then you can prescribe some medicine for the prince consort to relieve the pain first." Hearing that there was no blame in Tang Xi's tone, the old doctor felt relieved. She glanced at Lu Qing, whose face was pale from the pain, and asked his manservant, "How did the prince consort fall off the horse?" "I was riding a horse and accidentally fell. I'll have to trouble your highness to order someone to help me call for a doctor." Lu Qing's heart was extremely cold. He didn't want to become a cripple. It's best if you can invite that little divine doctor from the imperial city. Recently, I occasionally heard that her reputation is very good. Her medical skills aren't bad, so she should be able to treat my leg. All right. Tang Shi answered perfunctorily. Chapter 1511. The people sent by Tang Shi naturally did not manage to invite LV Yuji. After hearing the words of her subordinates, Tang Shi also felt that LV Yuji did not give her, the princess, face and was a little angry. She happened to pass by LV Yuji's clinic. Without saying a word, she asked someone to help her out of the carriage and walked into LV Yuji's clinic. She saw that LV Yuji was checking the pulse of a patient and did not seem to see her. Tang Shi's palace maid stepped forward and said, "Why aren't you saluting when you see the second princess?" LV Yuji glanced at Tang Shi and released the patient's wrist. She stood up and bowed to LV Yuji. "This humble girl greets the second princess. If your highness needs to see a doctor, please wait for 2 days and send someone to queue up. This humble girl has to treat the patient. Please forgive me for neglecting the second princess." Tang Shi wanted to take advantage of LV Yuji's disrespect to her to vent her anger. She did not expect the other party to be so sensible. She saluted properly and spoke politely. She could not find any fault at all. If she got angry like this, it would be too unreasonable. It would be a joke and people would compare her to Imperial Sister. This princess is not feeling well. Treat this princess first. The patient sitting in front of LV Yuji heard that she was going to get up and give up his spot. His illness was not urgent. He could wait in line later. It would not be good if the princess made things difficult for the little divine doctor. But just as he moved, LV Yuji held him down and said, "Sit down properly. I'll treat you. Your Highness, if you want to see a doctor, please queue up. There is no distinction between nobility and lowly here. There is only first come, first served." Yuji thinks that the Imperial City is a good place because this place is fair and there are few cases of bullying. I think the second princess can understand, right? You mean, if this princess wants you to see a doctor, it will be bullying? Tang Shi was unhappy. A little female doctor dared to say such words to her. She found the wrong place. The patients in line all wanted Tang Shi to go first, but they were stopped by LV Yuji. She said with a serious face, "I only look at the people who have queued up. I remember the people here clearly. If you want to see a doctor, no matter who it is, you have to queue up. This is the rule. Little divine doctor, right?" Tang Shi's lips curled up. It's really rare to see a little divine doctor with such a straightforward temper. The last person like you is all ready. How is it? Before Tang Shi could finish, Tang Guo's voice came from behind. Tang Shi couldn't be more familiar with this gentle and pleasant voice. She raised her head abruptly and saw Tang Guo coming out from the back of the clinic. Ying Zhu was still the same as before. No matter where Tang Guo went, she would always have a plate of snacks in her hand. Tang Shi's lips trembled and her legs trembled. "Sister, why are you here?" "This clinic is sponsored by me. When I have nothing to do, I like to come here and take a look at life and death," Wang Yao said. "System, host is bragging again. Look at how scared Tang Shi is." Tang Shi's expression was extremely ugly. So this is Imperial Sister's clinic. Why haven't I heard of it before? Didn't I just return to the Imperial City not long ago? And this clinic is open to treat illnesses and save lives. How can it be like other clinics that advertise it every day? Yuji's medical skills are good. Even if she doesn't advertise it, there will be an endless stream of people coming. Yuji can't handle it alone, so she can only diagnose 20 people a day. Chapter 1512. Second Royal Sister, what were you going to say just now? I interrupted you just now. You can continue now. Tang Guo looked up at Tang Shi with a smile. Tang Shi didn't dare to say anything else. She pursed her lips. I just think that there aren't many people with such a stubborn temper like the little divine doctor. It's very surprising. Now that I know she's Royal Sister's person, it's not surprising. With Royal Sister backing her up, anyone can be stubborn. Second Royal Sister is wrong. Yuji's temper has always been straightforward and straightforward. I'm backing her up because she's in the right. If she's unreasonable, no, Yuji is a good girl. She won't be unreasonable and cause trouble. System, very good, such a protective host. LV Yuji won't be unreasonable. As expected of his great host. Tang Shi heard the hidden meaning and was almost angered to death. LV Yuji buried her head and tried hard to hold back her laughter. Your Highness is still the best. They're both princesses, but why is there such a big difference? Isn't second royal sister sick? If you're not in a hurry, you can come the day after tomorrow. The new number will be out. Tang Guo said with a smile, if it's an urgent illness, it's better to go to the palace and ask the imperial physician to diagnose. Even if we are princesses of the royal family, we still have to pay attention to the order of arrival. Yuji treats the patients of the common people. There is only one situation that can make her make an exception and not wait in line. That is when the patient is carried to the clinic and is in critical condition. As a doctor, she cannot refuse. Otherwise, with the current reputation of the medical center, everyone knows not to come here to see an urgent illness. If you insist on coming here, you're being a hooligan to Yuji. Tang Shi was so embarrassed that she would never come here again. It's not a serious illness. I didn't know the rules here and caused trouble for Royal Sister. Royal Sister, I'll take my leave first. Tang Guo said with a smile, do you want me to send someone to go to the palace and ask the imperial physician for you? No need. Thank you for your kindness, Royal Sister. She was about to die of anger, okay? It was really a bad start. It was all Lu Qing's fault. If it weren't for him, would she have such a belly full of anger? Lu Qing, that man, was really a jinx. Ever since he entered her princess residence, nothing good had happened. How could she have been so blind to want to be with him in the first place? After Tang Shi left, the patients at the back of the line hurriedly bowed to Tang Guo and thanked her with tears of gratitude. It turned out that this place really had the support of the first princess. Previously, when they heard the rumors, they didn't believe it. The price of seeing a doctor here was very cheap, and the herbs were also very common. They could all afford it. Even if there were only 20 people a day, they wouldn't mind. Because of this, the news that Tang Guo owned a medical center spread out. LV Yuji's reputation grew, attracting the attention of the emperor and empress. When Tang Guo entered the palace, they asked about it. When I was traveling, I met a young lady. She was very smart and wholeheartedly wanted to treat illnesses and save people. I gave her this opportunity. Now it seems that she did a good job. It's really not easy for a young lady to do this. It's worth admiring. Compared to the empress, the emperor was actually a very open-minded person. If it weren't for the emperor, the empress might not have been able to accept that Tang Guo didn't get married and ran around all day. Under the emperor's leadership, the empress also saw the great capabilities of the women in the world. She no longer urged Tang Guo to get married. Chapter 1513. Her son was the crown prince, and her daughter was respected by the world. Her life was worth it. When she heard that the emperor was going to give LV Yuji a plaque, she said in approval, then I have to do something. I hope that all the women in the world can learn from me. It had to be said that the empress envied Tang Guo. She actually lived the life of many women's dreams. When LV Yuji received the plaque from the Emperor and the palace plaque from the Empress, she was a bit stunned. Your Highness, isn't this too fast? Although she felt that her ability was not bad and could attract the attention of those two, it definitely wouldn't be so fast. Then she reacted and hurriedly thanked, "Many thanks, Your Highness." His Highness must have said something good to make the Emperor and Empress give her such a gift. She understood Tangua's thoughts. She wanted the three of them to stand at the highest point and make Lu Qing look down on them, feel regret, despair, and finally kill them. Her mother always said that she didn't know what His Highness was thinking. Why did he have to do so many things to torment Lu Qing? It could be said that Lu Qing was unlucky. Who told him to provoke the vengeful His Highness? In the future, when you have nothing to do, go to the palace and see my imperial mother. She especially likes young girls. She really liked the flower tea you made last time. Yes, Yuji will definitely go and thank the Emperor and Empress. LV Yuji understood that she had reached the heavens in a single step at the age of not even 16. She wondered what expression Lu Qing would have if he knew that he had such a daughter. At this moment, she felt that His Highness's revenge was a wonderful idea. Next, Tanguo went to the farm field and looked at Lin Yuexiang wearing a straw hat and teaching the old farmers in the field. She sat at the side with a smile and drank tea. She was very satisfied. System, yes, the cows are all strong and can go to the field. How could she not be satisfied? She didn't know when it started, but the host became obsessed with raising cows. She even raised them in herds. The heads of the herds were all very strong. They were definitely good for farming. Your Highness, I feel like you're doing something big. Tanguo glanced at Yunbushio. Then you're wrong. What I did was not a big deal. But Your Highness has nurtured 3 capable people for Base Ya. One is a miraculous doctor, and the other is very likely to be this year's top scorer. He knows poetry and popular literature. This is Base Ya's fortune. There is another one who is proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, and martial arts. However, he is most proficient in the crops in the fields. This is the blessing of the northern summer country. Your Highness, if this isn't a big deal, then what is? Yun Bushio was intoxicated. This was the person he liked. How could she be so outstanding? Tanguo smiled gently. State Preceptor, didn't you participate in these 3 capable people? LV Yufan's talent and chess skills were all taught by the Imperial Preceptor. LV Yuji's medical skills were also taught by the Imperial Preceptor. The Imperial Preceptor had also made great contributions. If you're really doing something big, then you're the one doing something big. And I just wanted to take revenge for a personal grudge, but I accidentally made a big deal out of it. Tanguo looked helpless. I also didn't know that it would turn out like this. Maybe it's fate. Yun Bushio, why did he not believe it? What fate? Could it not change in her hands? She could even go against the heavens and change her fate. System, the host really knows how to pretend. Maybe when she said this, she didn't want to pretend. Chapter 15-14. Actually, I'm just being selfish. What Your Highness wants to do is what I want to do as well. I didn't expect the outcome to be like this. Yun Bushio continued. System, alright, we're all family. State Preceptor really knows how to talk. It's good that Your Highness likes to hear it. Recently, the people have sent me a lot of fruits. I've left a cart full of them for you. If you can't finish them, you can keep them to make fruit wine. I won't refuse Your Highness's kindness. After I make the fruit wine, I'll send a few pots for Your Highness to try. All right. The 2 of them sat on opposite sides of the table and chatted with each other. It was quiet and harmonious. The system felt that this was actually quite good. In this world, the host really didn't want to get married. She seemed to enjoy this feeling of freedom. Nothing could restrain her. She only needed to do and walk according to her heart. Yun Bushio's adaptability was quite good. He actually got used to her rhythm and followed her. It wasn't a lovey-dovey love, but another kind of good feeling. State Preceptor, I haven't asked you before. What are you going to do with the medicinal herbs in my mother's hands? Save someone. Oh. She can be considered as my adopted sister. She's the daughter of my adopted father's beloved. She was born in a complicated environment and was poisoned when she was young. After my adopted father passed away, his last wish was for me to help cure my adopted sister's poison. I owe my adopted father a favor, so I must do it. I'm afraid it's not as simple as curing the poison, right? Tanguo pursed her lips and glanced at Yun Bushio. Yun Bushio helplessly told the truth. Yes, my adopted father also asked me to take care of her. If possible, I'll marry her. I only promise to cure my adopted sister's poison. Without waiting for Tanguo to speak, Yun Bushio hurriedly said, since young, I've only treated her as my adopted sister. I've never had any other thoughts. It's impossible for me to be with her. State Preceptor, why are you in such a hurry to explain? I'm afraid that your highness will misunderstand. Even if we're not fated to be husband and wife, my heart belongs to you. I only want to be with you in this life. I don't want you to take this matter to heart. Then I'll invite State Preceptor to travel around the world with me in the future. Of course. The two of them smiled at each other and no longer talked about marriage or whether they liked it or not. Your Highness and State Preceptor are really compatible, but I don't know why they don't get together. Hearing the old farmer's discussion, Lin Yuexiang said, His Highness doesn't want to get married, and he doesn't want to be burdened by love. The State Preceptor is a righteous man who loves His Highness wholeheartedly. Even if they don't get married, they can't be separated. Look, aren't they perfectly fine? To open a door. Leaving a wall. Maybe it'll be more interesting. Hearing his words, the old farmers chuckled, yes, His Highness and the State Preceptor must have different ideas. How could we farmers understand them? Let's sow, we'll have a good harvest in a few months. A year later, Lin Yuexiang cultivated countless crops, fruits, and vegetables that were suitable for various places. The emperor was overjoyed. Under Tanguo's request, Lin Yuexiang became the first female official in Beixia. She was conferred the title by the emperor himself. Her Highness, the eldest princess, passed the decree. In a moment, the name Lin Yuexiang was known by everyone in the imperial city. Lin Yuexiang. Lu Qing was stunned when he heard the name. Then, he laughed. She has the same name. That Lin Yuexiang had died under a knife long ago. Chapter 15:15. Lu Qing heard that the newly conferred female official of Beixia had been invited to participate in the poetry gathering held by the talents of the imperial city. Perhaps it was because of that familiar name, but he also wanted to see what kind of person this female official was to be valued so highly by the emperor. He stood up and Wan Zhu hurriedly supported him. Lu Qing pushed Wan Zhu and said with a cold face, I don't need you to support me. My leg is just a little lame, it's not broken. I can walk by myself. Hearing this, Wan Zhu didn't dare to go up. Ever since the second prince consort accidentally broke his leg, his temper had become more and more eccentric. He would throw tantrums at the slightest thing, and the maids in the room were all a little afraid of him. Lu Qing limped out. He wanted to walk normally, but no matter what, he couldn't walk normally. He was originally a distinguished and elegant person, but because he had broken his leg while riding a horse and injured his bones, he had invited all the old doctors in the imperial city. Tang Shi had also invited the imperial doctor in the imperial palace to take a look at him. They all said that his leg could be treated, but their medical skills weren't enough and couldn't restore his leg to its original state. So after the wound healed, he became a lame person. So, was his leg really untreatable? If it wasn't for the fact that later on, he heard that someone had also broken his leg, and it was even more serious than his. In the end, it was cured by the little godly doctor of the medical hall in the northern part of the city. Now, he could walk normally and jump around as if nothing had happened. He wouldn't be so unresigned. He still bore a grudge against the little godly doctor of that medical hall, LV Yuji's name wasn't known by the people of the imperial city. Everyone was used to calling her the little godly doctor, and over time, they didn't care what she was called. Everyone called her the little godly doctor, and when it reached Lu Qing's ears, it was naturally only the 3 words, little godly doctor. If he heard the 3 words, LV Yuji, he might have some doubts in his heart. Of course, he might not have any doubts. Because in his heart, he didn't care about his wife and children. To be able to remember the 3 words, Lin Yuexiang, was also because Lin Yuexiang had left a deep impression on him. On the day of the poetry gathering, Tang Guo was also invited. Usually, Tang Guo wouldn't go, but the person who held the poetry party would definitely invite the eldest princess. As for whether she would come or not, that was her choice. Tang Guo believed that the name Lin Yuexiang was enough to attract Lu Qing. Even though in Lu Qing's heart, this woman who had already been given an official position by the emperor and could be an official at the same court as men, could not possibly be his former wife. However, he would definitely want to see how this woman with the same name looked like. He wanted to see if she was really as powerful as the rumors said. Therefore, Lu Qing would definitely go back. How could she not go to such an interesting event? Go and invite the imperial preceptor. We'll go to the poetry gathering together later. After receiving the invitation, Yun Buxiu hurriedly washed his face and changed into a clean set of clothes. He didn't go out through the main entrance of the princess residence, but directly jumped over the wall. Tang Guo happened to come out of the house and saw Yun Buxiu jumping down from the wall. She teased, "Imperial Preceptor, you're in such a good mood." Yun Buxiu was a little embarrassed, but he was a little happy. He couldn't find north and south, so he was beside himself with joy. Since the Imperial Preceptor is here, let's go. Yun Buxiu felt that the princess was especially happy today, as if something was going to happen. Chapter 15-16. When Yun Buxiu thought of Lin Yuexiang, he naturally thought of Lu Qing. In an instant, he guessed that Lu Qing would come to the poetry recital. He shook his head and smiled. No wonder Her Highness was so happy. He wanted to see how Lu Qing would react when he saw Lin Yuexiang. Of course, he felt that even if the current Lin Yuexiang stood in front of Lu Qing, he would not be able to recognize her. At this moment, Tang Guo and the others had already arrived at the poetry recital. She and Yun Buxiu sat in the pavilion. No one dared to disturb them. However, the organizer was really flattered that Tang Guo was able to come to this event. As long as she sat there and did nothing, it would be the greatest honor of his life. She was the fairy of his dreams. Yun Buxiu sensed that the gazes of all the scholars at the poetry recital involuntarily landed on Her Highness. Even though it was just a careful glance, it still made him a little unhappy. Indeed, Her Highness was too attractive. No one would not be attracted to her. Luckily, Her Highness was not interested in these scholars. Thinking of this, he felt that he was quite lucky. Compared to these scholars who could only watch from afar and dream, he and Her Highness were neighbors. Her Highness had personally said that no matter where she went in the future, she would be willing to bring him along to travel the world and enjoy the beautiful scenery. Then, Yun Bushio was happy again. He looked at the scholars with disdain. The system observed Yun Bushio's expression and almost burst out laughing. "Dear host, is this guy so easily satisfied now? There is no harm if there is no comparison. I treat him quite well. If there is no comparison in the past, how would he know?" The system thought to itself, yes, host really treats Yun Bushio well. Seeing how host treats Lu Qing, one could understand how much hatred this woman had in her heart. Not only did she want to destroy Lu Qing's status and everything he cared about, but she also wanted to destroy him from the bottom of his heart. After destroying his confidence, she wanted to take his life. Other than Princess Tanggua, Lin Yuexiang was the most dazzling person today. Everyone saw that she was wearing a plain long dress, and her every movement was imposing and sharp. She was completely different from an ordinary woman. Even though she only had light makeup on her face, half of her hair was tied up with a hairpin and the other half was draped over her shoulders. Her hair was tied into a bun, and her clothes looked so simple, but it was impossible to ignore her. She didn't have any extra adornments, but she was incomparable to the countless meticulously dressed women at the poetry festival. Lin Yuexiang first came to Tanggua and greeted her calmly. Then she returned to the crowd and chatted with others. Her words and actions were really eloquent. Whether it was elegant or vulgar, she was at her fingertips. The candidates didn't dare to think about becoming the first princess. What about this female official? After the candidates came into contact with Lin Yuexiang, they shook their heads helplessly and didn't dare to think about it. How could these two women be so outstanding? Furthermore, Lin Yuexiang was an official in the imperial court. Who would dare to marry her? Even if they did, they would have to treat her well. But even if they wanted to marry her, would she be willing? Who here would be able to catch her eye? When Tang Shi arrived, not many people were looking at her. Lin Yuexiang. You met her once before. She was a little annoyed. It was fine that she couldn't compare to her sister, but Lin Yuexiang couldn't compare to her. She wanted to find trouble with Lin Yuexiang, but she was an official in the imperial court. Chapter 15-17. The emperor had personally conferred the title. As a princess, she absolutely could not offend the other party. Your Highness, Lin Yuexiang has really changed a lot. Yun Bushio sighed. If it was said that LV Yuji and LV Yufan had changed because of him. This Lin Yuexiang was personally nurtured by the princess. Her Royal Highness was indeed a very powerful woman. Who could turn a village woman into an important official in the court? In this world, there was probably no one who could do it, right? System, the host is just raising cows. Can't you see that she's so bored now? There were people helping her do everything now. There was the emperor and the crown prince who doted on her. Below them were Lin Yuexiang and her two sons, as well as countless brainless fans. If the host wanted to do something big, with a little instigation, there would probably be a large group of people following. That's Lin Yuexiang's own ability. Tanggua originally wanted to try. She didn't do anything and just gave Lin Yuexiang the opportunity and conditions. If it was someone else, even if they were given the opportunity and conditions, they might not be able to do it today. In this world, how many people were born better than Lin Yuexiang, had better conditions, and had better roads than her? But they couldn't do it to Lin Yuexiang's level. That was why she said that it was Lin Yuexiang's ability. Lin Yuexiang's smile was gentle, and there was an unquestionable aura in the gentleness. Not only did it attract the admiration of many men, but many women were also very envious. If the eldest princess was a role model for all women in the world, she was really far away from them. After all, the eldest princess had a noble status. No matter what she did, ordinary people couldn't compare to her. Lin Yuexiang was different. It was said that she was born poor. They couldn't be jealous of such a woman. Tang Shi didn't greet Lin Yuexiang. She didn't want to say anything to her. The light on Lin Yuexiang's body was really too dazzling. Even if she was dressed simply, her appearance was even more outstanding than hers. Even her luxurious clothes couldn't cover up the other party's brilliance, which made her angry. Lu Qing arrived late. He could see the woman in plain clothes surrounded by people at a glance. When he saw Lin Yuexiang, he was stunned for a moment. This woman's appearance seemed to be different from what he had imagined. He thought that such a talented and outstanding woman would not be too beautiful. He never thought that Lin Yuexiang would be so beautiful. He limped over and happened to hear Lin Yuexiang discussing poetry. After listening to her, he really had a good impression of her. He could not help but compose a poem on the spot, intending to get to know this woman. He originally thought that his talent would definitely be appreciated by Lin Yuexiang, who also liked poetry. However, Lin Yuexiang only nodded and smiled at him after hearing his words. Then, there was no then. Lu Qing didn't give up. After all, he was one of the top talents in the imperial city. Why was Lin Yuexiang's reaction so cold? Could it be that the poem just now didn't move her? That's right. This Lin Yuexiang was not an ordinary woman. It seemed that he had to put in some effort. Lu Qing composed several poems in succession, but Lin Yuexiang's reaction was mediocre. His expression was a bit ugly. If it wasn't for the other party's identity, he really wanted to question her on the spot. Then, there were other talents composing poems. Occasionally, one or two of them would be praised by Lin Yuexiang. He was so angry that he wanted to hit them. He felt that all women called Lin Yuexiang liked to go against him. Chapter 15-18. Lin Yuexiang dealt with the surrounding scholars while observing Lu Qing's reaction. She saw the other party's awkward expression, especially when he gave her the feeling of a clown. At this moment, she felt that Lu Qing was just a so-so. In all fairness, Lu Qing's poems were not as good as the poems of the scholars present. And the other party seemed to think that he was talented and deserved to be praised. Poems that only expressed love for mountains and rivers were beautiful when read, but they lacked artistic conception when read. Especially when the other party had written poems praising beauties to curry favor with her. She found it very funny. When she married Lu Qing, she gave birth to his children and helped him take care of the family. When his parents passed away, she was the one who took care of everything. When she married Lu Qing, she was also a young and beautiful woman. Lu Qing was well-read. Why didn't he write a poem to praise her? Now that she had appeared with a different appearance, and this was the first time they had met, the other party actually wrote a few poems to curry favor with her. What a joke. Miss Lin, are you dissatisfied with me? Lu Qing finally couldn't stand being ignored by Lin Yuexiang. Perhaps it was because of this name, it reminded him of the obedient Lin Yuexiang. He couldn't stand being treated so coldly. Lin Yuexiang looked at Lu Qing in surprise. The others also looked at him in confusion. One of the scholars spoke up, "Second Prince Consort, although Lord Lin is a lady, Lord Lin's official position was personally conferred by the Emperor. So, shouldn't we change the way we address the second Prince Consort? I'm afraid it's not appropriate to address Miss Lin like this." Lin Yuexiang felt that this scholar was really good at talking. In the words of the first princess, she wanted to give this person a thumbs up. Well said. Now, she should be respectfully addressed as Lord Lin and not Miss Lin. Hearing this, Lu Qing's expression changed. Seeing that everyone was calling Lin Yuexiang Lord Lin Yuexiang, he finally said, "All right, Lord Lin, may I ask if you're dissatisfied with me?" I just composed a few poems, but Lord Lin didn't comment on them. Instead, he's chatting and laughing with others and even praising them. I don't quite understand what that means. What else could it mean? Of course it's because your poem isn't good. Lord Lin is giving you face and doesn't want to comment. Tang Guo's voice rang out. Everyone quickly turned their heads and cupped their hands towards her as a form of greeting. Her Royal Highness the First Princess didn't like people kneeling for no reason, especially at a place like the poetry gathering. When Lu Qing saw Tang Guo walking over and even speaking up for Lin Yuexiang, he almost fainted from anger. Eldest royal sister, I know you're dissatisfied with me. He patted his leg. Oh. You clearly know that my leg needs the little miracle doctor's help, but you didn't say a word. If you said a word, I wouldn't be in this state today. Forget about that. But if you belittle my poem, then I won't let it go. In terms of poetry, Lu Qing was still relatively confident. Ever since Lu Qing broke his leg and became a cripple, he had lost all his rationality. He felt that everyone was hurting him and hated him. He couldn't calm down. When he heard Tang Guo's words, coupled with the anger in his heart, he couldn't help but retort. There was a kind of feeling of smashing a broken jar. When Tang Shi heard Lu Qing's words, her expression changed greatly. She didn't want to offend her royal sister. What was wrong with this Lu Qing? He was becoming more and more immature. Wasn't it good for a cripple to stay in the residence? Why did he have to come out and make a fool of himself? Oh. Chapter 15-19. Your poems aren't good to begin with. Official Lin gave you face, but I won't. Lu Qing was infuriated. Tang Guo was happy. This Lu Qing had really lost his mind. You said that the little divine doctor didn't treat you. Are you blaming me? Lu Qing wanted to say, of course. Suddenly, there was a gust of wind and the crisp sound of a slap was heard. It turned out that Tang Shi heard Lu Qing's nonsense and was afraid that Tang Guo would be angry. She couldn't help but slap Lu Qing's face. It was very inappropriate for a prince consort to write a few poems praising official Lin's appearance in public. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he was flirting with an official. Was there something wrong with his head? How can you speak to royal sister like that? Tang Shi said coldly. The little divine doctor has his rules. He can only treat 20 people a day and they have to line up 3 days in advance. Even royal father agrees with this rule. Do you think he will make an exception for you? Lu Qing was also stunned. He had been married to Tang Shi for more than 10 years and this was the first time he was slapped. Especially in front of so many people. It was really humiliating. Why aren't you guys bringing the second prince consort back to the princess residence? The second prince consort fell sick some time ago and his mind is not clear. He likes to talk nonsense. I didn't expect that he would offend royal sister because of my carelessness. Please don't mind. Tang Guo said, then let's bring him back and get the doctor to treat him. Lu Qing's eyes widened. He was held down by 2 servants. He was a weak scholar. Besides the strength he had when he was farming, he couldn't struggle at all. Just like that, he was brought back in front of everyone. From today onwards, he didn't have the face to appear in front of this group of scholars. Lin Yuexiang stood silently beside Tang Guo and looked at Lu Qing's sorry figure with a faint smile. Lu Qing loved glory and wealth, so he abandoned his wife who was devoted to him and was gentle to him. Now, because he had said something wrong, he had been slapped in public by the high and mighty second princess. Did the other party feel the slightest bit of regret in his heart? No, that can't be. Lu Qing would only blame everyone here. He would think that she had no foresight. He would think that the first princess was deliberately messing with him. He would think that the second princess had embarrassed him. Why would he regret it? Lu Qing would never have thought that Lin Yuexiang would be his first wife, and that Tang Shi would slap her in front of her. Lord Lin, how was it? Did it feel good? Back in the pavilion, Tang Gua asked Lin Yuexiang. Lin Yuexiang smiled faintly. It feels great. Thank you, Your Highness. I didn't expect that the person I once respected and loved was actually such an unbearable person. Oh, the best is yet to come. Don't worry, let's slowly let him know the truth. Your Highness, I'm not worried at all. Let's play slowly. If we kill him, I won't be able to vent my anger. Tang Gua teased. I heard that you have a lot of wooden stakes in your residence. Are you sure? I'm used to it. After all, I have to practice martial arts every day. Lin Yuexiang chuckled. If there is a day when I can beat a real person, that would be the best. When I beat a real person, my hand won't hurt too much. System, another woman who has been led astray by the host. How are Yufan's preparations? He said that he will be the top scholar. There is no problem. Your Highness, just wait. Yufan will not disappoint you. Your Highness values him so much. If he doesn't become the top scholar, I will personally beat him up. Tang Guo laughed. As a mother, can't you be more gentle? What if you scare Yufan? Your Highness, gentle women are easily taken advantage of. I am now an official of the imperial court. I can't be too gentle. Lin Yuexiang said matter-of-factly. Chapter 1520. The news of Lu Qing being slapped by the second princess during the poetry recital spread like wildfire in the imperial city. Because of this, Lu Qing bore a grudge against Lin Yuexiang. He felt that if it wasn't for Lin Yuexiang, he wouldn't have been humiliated and wouldn't have the face to attend the poetry recital in the imperial city. To the people of the imperial city, this was something that they took great delight in talking about. To the emperor and empress, it was just a trivial matter. No matter what Tang Shi or Lu Qing did, as long as it didn't escalate and cause a death, they would turn a blind eye to it. It should be said that the emperor and empress didn't care about Tang Shi and naturally wouldn't care so much. When the emperor heard that it was Lu Qing who wrote a poem praising Lin Yuexiang's beauty in front of everyone, his words were frivolous and he felt that Tang Shi had done a good job. Although Lin Yuexiang was a woman, was she a simple woman? Now, she was one of his ministers and had to attend court every day. She was the first female official in the northern Xia country. After the poetry recital, Lu Qing didn't step out of his room. In his account book, there were a few people who were very hateful. Tang Gua, the imperial city's little miracle doctor, the female official Lin Yuexiang and Tang Shi. He was still a cripple now. Especially when Tang Shi kept scolding him that he was a cripple and didn't want to stay in his residence and instead went out to stir up trouble, it really made him angry. But after the anger, Lu Qing felt very helpless. Back then, he resolutely chose Princess Shang because he felt that with his ability, even if he didn't enter the imperial city as an official, he could still achieve something. Now, a mere woman had become an official in the imperial city and was suppressing him. It really made him feel very uncomfortable. Especially that woman's name was Lin Yuexiang. Compared to Lu Qing, Lin Yuexiang was much more glamorous. She got on and off the court on time. She got along well with her colleagues. In her spare time, she would drop by Tang Gua's place. Everyone knew that she was the first princess's person, so no one dared to rope her in. They don't dare to rope me in, but that doesn't mean they don't want to rope me in. Lin Yuexiang had a helpless expression on her face. Although she had long been prepared for this, there were still many things that she found hard to believe after entering the imperial court and becoming an official. Tang Guo was curious. What did they do? Send me men. Lin Yuexiang took a piece of pastry and swallowed it. She was speechless. They're all 17 and 18 years old teenagers. They have red lips and white teeth. They each have their own strengths in poetry and calligraphy. Lin Yuexiang held her forehead and said, Your Highness, do you think I can do it to a youth who is only 2 or 3 years older than my son? I really don't know why they think I like this kind of young man. One day, when I returned home, there was actually a young man lying on my bed in my room. Tangua's lips couldn't help but curl up. These officials of Bei Xia were quite interesting. They actually thought of stuffing men on Lin Yuexiang's bed. Host, is this considered keeping pace with the times? To deal with men, stuffing women. To deal with women, stuffing good-looking men. Tangua smiled and asked Lin Yuexiang, what happened to that young man? I asked him if he was forced, Lin Yuexiang replied. She didn't think there was anything wrong with this question. After all, there were many people like this who couldn't help themselves. I didn't expect that he actually said with a shy face that he was willing. Later, I asked someone to throw him out. The next day, when the imperial court was dismissed, I had no choice but to ask for a group of people from the emperor. The original people in the residence were all dismissed. It's finally quiet now, Lin Yuexiang said with a face of relief. Chapter 1521. Lin Yuexiang now had her own residence. LV Yuji lived in the princess residence, and LV Yufan lived in Yunbushio's residence. Although the 3 residences were very close to each other, other than a few insiders, no one knew the relationship between the 3 of them. Compared to Lin Yuexiang, who was in the limelight, and LV Yuji, who had the title of Little Divine Doctor, LV Yufan seemed to be very obscure. In the midst of obscurity, LV Yufan finally welcomed the imperial examination. Previously, Lin Yuexiang and LV Yuji were very busy. Other than coming back every night to check on LV Yufan's situation, they didn't meet at all. LV Yufan wasn't nervous about the examination at all. On the contrary, compared to his previous life, he was more confident that he could shine in this life. Lin Yuexiang and LV Yuji were also waiting for this day. The day when they would beat up Lu Qing was getting closer and closer. While LV Yufan was taking the examination, Lu Qing wasn't idle. He thought about it and was unwilling to give up. He also heard many things about Lin Yuexiang. He decided to personally take action. No matter what, he had to teach Lin Yuexiang a lesson. As for how to teach Lin Yuexiang a lesson, no matter what, she was still a woman. If news of her having an ambiguous relationship with a man were to spread, it would definitely have a huge impact on her. If it was an ordinary man, everyone would only think that Lin Yuexiang was a bit loose and wouldn't think much of it. What if this man was the prince consort of the current second princess, Lu Qing? Host, Lu Qing recently went to find Lin Yuexiang. I feel that he must be plotting something. In this life, Lu Qing was greatly suppressed by the host. However, he didn't grow up and could only think of such despicable methods. However, this method was really vicious. If Lin Yuexiang was really plotted against by him, it would be a weakness that could be used against her. That's right. Think about it. A woman of ordinary birth who finally became the first female official of the dynasty with her own abilities. At this time, Lu Qing's evil plan will succeed. She will definitely panic, and then Lu Qing will be able to do whatever he wants to her. What a beautiful dream. Tanguo was sitting in the courtyard of her princess residence, eating snacks while listening to the system's live broadcast. Not long after, Ingzhu ran in and said in a low voice, Your Highness, Lord Lin sent someone to invite Your Highness over to watch the show. Go and invite the Imperial Preceptor. Let's watch the show together. When Yunbuxiu heard that Tang Guo wanted to invite him to watch a show, he didn't care about anything else and directly jumped down from the neighboring wall. A spotless white robe fluttered and landed in front of her. The people in the princess residence were already used to it and did not find it strange. The group of people majestically went to the restaurant where Lin Yuexiang was. On the way, Tang Guo bumped into Tang Shi, who had just returned from playing outside the city. When Tang Shi made way for her, she kindly said, "Second Imperial Sister, there's a good show today. Do you want to watch it?" Tang Shi muttered in her heart. What good show? She had been a bit dissolute these years, and her dream of becoming the Princess Royal was basically dispelled by Tang Guo's existence. Other than Lu Qing causing trouble for her, she felt that she was living quite comfortably. Therefore, if she could avoid offending Tang Guo, she would definitely not offend her. She finally understood that as long as she lived her own life and didn't provoke her imperial sister, her life would still go on. Seeing Tang Guo's deep expression, she felt that something was wrong. Imperial sister, what show is it? Was it worth the trouble to watch it? Chapter 1522. When Tang Shi heard the words Lu Qing from Tang Guo's mouth, her expression changed. Lu Qing again. How much trouble was this Lu Qing going to cause for her? Why couldn't he just hide in the princess's residence and be her second prince consort? He had touched all the maids in the princess's residence, except for the people around her. Was he still not satisfied? Tang Shi's heart trembled as she followed Tang Guo. She tried her best to keep a straight face. When she arrived at the restaurant, she saw Lin Yuexiang standing outside from afar. She could no longer keep a straight face. Not only Lin Yuexiang, but there were also many people in the restaurant. It was noisy inside. No one knew what was going on. These people all knew Tang Guo and Tang Shi. When they saw them, they quickly made way for them. Tang Shi took a deep breath and ran quickly. When she saw the scene inside, she almost fainted. It turned out that Lu Qing's face was red and he was taking off his clothes in the restaurant. When he saw people passing by him, he wanted to pull them back. When she got closer, she realized that Lu Qing's face was swollen. He was hugging the pillar because he couldn't stand properly. That was why so many people dared to look at him. Lu Qing was only left with his underwear and there seemed to be footprints on his body. Tang Shi only felt her face burning. She quickly turned around and called for people to take Lu Qing back. What happened? Tang Guo asked Lin Yuexiang in a voice that was neither loud nor soft. Lin Yuexiang replied, I don't know what's wrong with this second prince consort. He suddenly chased after me from downstairs and actually wanted to hug me. Of course, I had no choice but to beat him up. There are still many women in this restaurant. If the unmarried ones were hugged by him, their reputations would be ruined. After being beaten up, he hugged the pillar. I don't know what he was doing. Although Lin Yuexiang said that, those who could see clearly knew what was wrong with Lu Qing. He was clearly drugged, and it was a strong drug at that. He couldn't hug anyone, so he hugged a pillar and licked and kissed it. Could it be that he thought this pillar was a girl? Especially when he did some indecent things, it was really embarrassing. This second prince consort was a top scholar back then. How could he be so unbearable? Could it be that he really had some serious illness? Tang Shi listened to the whispers around her and said, Second prince consort has a serious mental illness. It's my fault for not taking care of him well. The princess residence will compensate for all the losses of the restaurant and everyone here. After saying that, she nodded to Tang Guo, then asked someone to pull Lu Qing, who was still going crazy, away. He wanted to drug me. After returning to the princess residence, Lin Yuexiang said in a low voice. Her voice was extremely cold. This person is really getting worse and worse. Even his methods are so despicable. No, he has always been such a despicable person. Lu Qing had always been that kind of person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent people to hunt down the three of them. This time, Lu Qing's scheme failed and he was beaten up by Lin Yuexiang. He even did something disgraceful in public. He had really thrown his face all the way to his grandmother's house. When the people in the imperial city mentioned Lu Qing, they would no longer praise him as the top scholar back then and as a talented person. They would only talk about the disgraceful things he did this time. Tang Shi announced to the public that Lu Qing had a mental illness and was now under guard. In the future, he wouldn't go outside to harass the people. Even so, Lu Qing's image couldn't be restored. Tang Shi really locked Lu Qing in a room and sent Lu Qing's favorite, Wan Zhu, to take care of him. Lu Qing had a bad temper. He was locked in the room and yelled all day long. Chapter 1523. Wan Zhu looked at Lu Qing, who was crippled and looked dispirited. His face was full of wrinkles, and he was no longer as high-spirited as before. When she was wiping Lu Qing's face, she hesitated for a moment. Was this what she wanted? Wan Zhu, you're the only one by my side. Unexpectedly, at this time, Lu Qing suddenly became gentle. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he looked at her and held her hand. None of the people around me are sincere. You're the only one who's willing to stay by my side. Wan Zhu, you're the best. Lu Qing's words made Wan Zhu's heart ache. Prince Consort, Wan Zhu will take good care of you. Lu Qing closed his eyes and no longer lost his temper. He had been defeated twice by Lin Yuexiang and humiliated twice by Tang Shi. He couldn't take it anymore. This kind of life was not what he wanted. Therefore, he had to find a way to rise up. The only person who could help him stand up again was the third prince. As long as the third prince became the emperor in the future, he would be second only to one and above all, even if he was a cripple. Tang Gua, Lin Yuexiang, the little magic doctor, he would slowly deal with these people one by one. As for Tang Shi, he wouldn't let her go either. He just had to wait until the end. Although Lu Qing didn't have a good life these years. In fact, with his intelligence, he still made a lot of money. He planned to give this money to the third prince to support him in raising a private army. Even if he couldn't inherit the throne openly, it would be the same if he directly seized the throne. Lu Qing recuperated for a while and told Tang Shi that he wouldn't go crazy anymore. Only then did Tang Shi allow him to go out. Seeing that he was really well behaved, smiling at everyone and didn't lose his temper for no reason, Tang Shi was relieved and didn't care. When the third prince and Lu Qing started to act strangely, Crown Prince Tang Ji had already noticed it. However, he didn't say anything. In fact, he had long wanted to remove the thorn in the third prince's side. However, the other party had always been very low-key and he couldn't find any fault. Although he didn't know what the two were discussing at the moment, it was definitely not something good. It was better to wait for the other party to get the evidence and then find a reason to get rid of them. Tang Ji felt that his idea was very good. He quickly ran in front of Tang Gua and told her the plan. He had a feeling that he was going to praise him. Gua, what do you think of this idea? Very good, but royal brother, you have to monitor their movements at all times. You can't let them do anything unexpected. Brother, Tang Ji was full of confidence. I know what I'm doing. And I'll wait for him to make a mistake. Today, Imperial Father mentioned him intentionally or unintentionally. Although he didn't say anything, I could feel that Imperial Father might know. Come to think of it, Imperial Father is so wise, how could such a small trick be hidden? It's good that you know. By the way, I've taken a fancy to a few people in this year's Imperial examination. I think they are all good seedlings. One of them is called Lu Yufan. He's young and knowledgeable. I think he's very likely to be this year's top scholar. Tang Ji didn't like Yun Buxiu and basically didn't go to Yun Buxiu's place. Naturally, he didn't know that Lu Yufan was Yun Buxiu's disciple. Has Imperial Brother already pulled that person into your camp? Tang Ji quickly said, what do you mean by pulling him to your side? I'm making friends with him, good friends. Chapter 15:24. It was enough that his father liked him. Forget about getting the crown prince's henchman. He didn't want to arouse his father's suspicion. Yun Buxiu was next door. He was about to climb over the wall to Tang Guo's courtyard. Suddenly, he heard Tang Ji's voice. He paused in his action of jumping over the wall. Then, he held the wine pot in his hand and changed his direction. He walked out of the main entrance of his residence and entered through the main entrance of the princess' residence. As soon as he appeared, Tang Ji turned his head away. Yun Buxiu was a treacherous guy. When he became the state preceptor of Bei Xia, he had bad intentions. He didn't expect that he had taken a fancy to his precious sister. Later, when his father asked him what reward he wanted, he actually asked for the residence next to the princess' residence. It was really a good plan. Therefore, he didn't like Yun Buxiu. However, the other party didn't do anything wrong. As the crown prince, he could only talk less with the other party. Your Highness, this is fruit wine brewed from the fruit you gave me last time. Yun Buxiu placed the wine pot in front of Tang Guo. He glanced at Tang Ji and placed another pot of wine in front of him. Your Highness, this is a fragrant and strong wine. Tang Ji snorted. In the end, he took the wine and said, I'll leave first. Seeing that the other party didn't succeed in anything and could only follow behind his younger sister, he didn't care too much about it. He was busy. Especially when his father was getting older. Many important tasks had fallen on his shoulders. He didn't have much free time. Your Highness, I'll pour it for you. This is the first pot. It should taste good. Tang Ji heard the voice behind him and felt a little sympathy for Yun Buxiu. His sister didn't want to get married. Of course, he didn't know that his sister had promised Yun Buxiu that she would bring him wherever she went. Unsurprisingly, LV Yufan was the top scorer. The emperor personally selected her in the throne room. This time, LV Yufan was still 16 years old. From the emperor's words, he could feel that the emperor's eyes were full of praise compared to his previous life. However, just like in his previous life, he wanted to sue Lu Qing at this most glorious moment. LV Yufan, why haven't you left yet? The emperor asked curiously. He admired this young boy very much. This was the future minister of the crown prince, and he had to nurture him well. LV Yufan knelt down in front of everyone and kowtowed 3 times. Then she straightened her back and said on the spot, Your Majesty, LV Yufan will sue someone today. As soon as he finished speaking, all the civil and military officials in the imperial court were shocked. The little top scorer who had just been selected by the emperor was actually going to sue someone. This was the first time they had seen it. The emperor was also interested and said, Who do you want to sue? Reporting to the second prince consort, Lu Qing. LV Yufan said the same words as in her previous life, but this time, she was even more confident. She was sure that she would be able to sue Lu Qing to death. When the words second prince consort Lu Qing appeared, the entire court was in an uproar. Lu Qing had caused a lot of trouble recently, and they had all heard about it. The emperor didn't care about it, and they were only secretly discussing it. When the new top scorer suddenly wanted to sue Lu Qing, they couldn't help but remember that Lu Qing had also been the top scorer in the imperial examination. Their expressions were a little strange. Wait, Lu Qing's surname was Lu, and LV Yufan's surname was Lu. It couldn't be so coincidental, right? Then tell me, what do you want to sue Lu Qing for? The emperor's expression became a little more serious. LV Yufan glanced at Lin Yuexiang's position. The mother and son's eyes met for a moment. Chapter 1525. First, I accuse Lu Qing of abandoning his wife and child. Second, I accuse Lu Qing of viciously killing his wife and child. Third, I accuse Lu Qing of deceiving the emperor. LV Yufan's 3 accusations shocked the entire court, including the emperor. From this short sentence, they were able to deduce several things. Lu Qing originally had a wife and child. For the sake of glory and wealth, he did not hesitate to kill his wife and child. If this was not deceiving the emperor, then what was? The emperor narrowed his eyes and asked, "What identity do you have to accuse Lu Qing of? What evidence do you have?" Lu Qing is Yufan's father. As soon as she finished speaking, some people in the court almost lost their balance. This piece of news was really too explosive. As for evidence, I have it. Not only do I have witnesses, but I also have material evidence. LV Yufan continued, "Is your majesty willing to give Yufan a chance? Then bring me the evidence. Can you find witnesses and material evidence immediately?" The emperor was slightly shocked but quickly regained his composure. To many people, this was a big matter. To the emperor, as long as it was not a natural disaster, a problem at the border, or an assassination attempt, these were all small matters. He used to admire Lu Qing. But now, if LV Yufan did not mention this person, he would have almost forgotten that Lu Qing was once the top scholar that he personally selected. Please invite official Lin, Her Highness the eldest princess, and the little godly doctor of the imperial city. LV Yufan called out 3 people in a row, causing the court officials to feel dizzy. Lin Yuexiang was already standing beside LV Yufan. She knelt down with LV Yufan and said, "Reporting to your majesty, this subject is Lu Qing's former wife." The court officials thought, "Are you joking? How could Lu Qing not understand? Why would he abandon such a good wife and such an outstanding son?" LV Yuji had already entered the palace and was waiting outside. When she heard her name being called, she walked into the throne room and knelt down beside Lin Yuexiang. "Yuji greets your majesty. What is your identity?" The emperor still liked LV Yuji and asked with a smile. LV Yuji replied, "Yuji is Lu Qing's daughter." Finally, Tanguo walked in with a smile on her face. All the civil and military officials could not help but become more serious. Tanguo did not kneel. The emperor had already dismissed her from her position, so she only bowed and said, "Imperial father, I saved these 3 people when I was traveling in the past." When the emperor heard this, he was amused. "When you saved them, you already knew that they had been wronged. Why didn't you report it?" "Because compared to suing Lu Qing, I believe that their lives are more important. Imperial father, look at the current situation. Don't you think so?" Tanguo said with a smile. The emperor thought to himself, "I'm afraid it's not like this. He definitely wants to let the 3 of them become influential first. When the time comes, Lu Qing won't be able to escape even if he wants to." Now, Lu Qing's life was a mess. On the other hand, the 3 mothers and children that he had abandoned were each more glorious than the other. This Lu Qing must be very upset. The emperor instantly guessed that the one who came up with this bad idea must be his little princess Guo. This lass was really fickle in her thinking. However, the 3 people below were indeed very good. "Show me the evidence." Tanguo asked someone to present all the letters that Lu Qing had once written. At the same time, a group of people were brought up, tied up. These people were the ones who had followed Lu Qing's orders to spy on Lin Yuexiang and her children. They were also the ones who had chased after the three of them in the end. They were not martial arts experts. They only knew martial arts, which was why the three of them were able to escape for so long. After the emperor finished looking at the evidence and listening to those people, he said, "Summon Lu Qing, oh." Chapter 1526. Other than the annual banquet and the Thousand Autumns festival, he basically never entered the palace. This was the first time he was summoned to the palace by the emperor, so he was a little stunned. When he came back to his senses, he quickly gave the eunuch who delivered the decree some money, but the eunuch refused and didn't reveal anything. He only told him to enter the palace immediately. Tang Shi also didn't go out to play today. When she heard that the emperor summoned Lu Qing to the palace, she subconsciously asked, "Did you go out and cause trouble again?" Lu Qing denied. Recently, he had been well-behaved and secretly helped the third prince recruit soldiers. He really didn't cause any trouble. If the emperor found out that the third prince raised a private army, it wouldn't be so easy. Then quickly enter the palace. Don't let Imperial Father wait for too long. Lu Qing, I'm warning you. You better do as you said and not cause any trouble. If you really provoke Imperial Father, this princess can't save you. Tang Shi's words were full of disdain and contempt, and it was in front of the eunuch. Lu Qing was furious and his face was burning. He quickly followed the eunuch. On the way, Lu Qing asked several times what was going on. However, the eunuch didn't reveal anything, so he could only give up. When he was directly brought to the throne room, he was a little dumbfounded and at a loss as he reminisced. This was the second time he came to the throne room. The last time was more than 10 years ago. At that time, he was in the limelight. The emperor personally picked him as the top scholar and everyone envied him. When he arrived at the throne room, Lu Qing saw many familiar people and his heart was beating like a drum. He limped in and knelt down to greet the emperor. The emperor didn't let him rise immediately. Instead, he asked, "Lu Qing, someone accused you of abandoning your wife and child. For glory and wealth, you didn't hesitate to send people to kill your wife and child. Today, I summoned you to the palace to hear it with my own ears." At that moment, Lu Qing almost collapsed to the ground. His whole body was trembling. He was glad that he was now kneeling and not standing. If he was standing, anyone would be able to see that his legs were trembling and weak. His mind was blank and his heart was in a mess. This matter had already happened a long time ago. How could it suddenly be exposed? The matter of him sending people to kill Lin Yuexiang was done very secretly. Those people were his trusted aides. Every month, he spent a large sum of money on them. They shouldn't betray him. His mind spun quickly. He absolutely could not admit to killing his wife and child. However, he couldn't hide the fact that he had married and had children. What should he say to clear his name? What should he say to get the emperor to let him go? What should he say to win the sympathy of the crowd? Oh. Lu Qing's clothes were already soaked in sweat. It was also because he was burying his head. Beads of sweat dripped down his cheeks without anyone noticing, directly landing on his robes. Even if he, the prince consort, was the joke of the imperial city, it was still better than losing his head. Moreover, he was already planning something big with the third prince. He absolutely couldn't lose his head at this juncture. In an instant, the image of Tang Shi mocking him flashed through Lu Qing's mind. At the same time, he also remembered the first time Tang Shi saw him. Her face was full of joy and shyness. An idea popped into his mind. Lu Qing. The emperor saw that Lu Qing was only burying his head and didn't speak. He couldn't help but call out again, "What I said just now, is it true?" Lu Qing suddenly prostrated himself on the ground. His forehead landed heavily on the floor with a thud. Those who heard it felt that he used a lot of force. It must be very painful. Chapter 1527. Your Majesty, please forgive me. Lu Qing said. Lu Qing does have a wife and children. This is the truth. Lu Qing cannot defend himself. The emperor was surprised. He looked down at Lu Qing and asked, "Then, you admit to deceiving the emperor?" Lu Qing admits it. Seeing this, all the civil and military officials were puzzled. Lu Qing admitted it just like that. They felt that it was different from what they had expected. They looked at Lin Yuexiang and her son, who were standing at the side calmly. They felt that there was more to this show. Tang Guo's lips curled up. Her eyes were fixed on Lu Qing. This Lu Qing, at the crucial moment, always came up with some insidious schemes. Between Tang Shi and the original owner, at most, there was a battle of jealousy. There wasn't much hatred. In her previous life, the original owner and Lu Qing became a couple. Later on, Tang Shi fell in love with another person, but that person died early. When the original owner met with misfortune and was locked up in a nunnery, she finally had the chance to be with Lu Qing. At that time, although Lu Qing was middle-aged, he was high-spirited. Even though Tang Shi was a princess, she was obedient to Lu Qing. Lu Qing was above everyone else. He had countless concubines. In this life, when Lu Qing was in danger, the person he framed became Tang Shi. But, was it so easy? Over the years, Tang Shi had always avoided her sharp edge. She didn't go against her and lived her life behind closed doors. She was much smarter than the third prince. Tang Shi, who didn't like Lu Qing, wouldn't be schemed against by Lu Qing. Lu Qing admits to having a wife and children. But Lu Qing doesn't admit to sending people to kill his wife and children. At this time, Lu Qing raised his head. His face was full of tears. When the civil and military officials heard his choked voice, they felt that something was wrong. Lin Yuexiang saw Lu Qing's appearance and sneered in her heart. She silently stood at the side and watched Lu Qing's performance. If it was the vulgar woman in the past, seeing Lu Qing like this, she might not be able to keep her cool and immediately confront him. Although Lu Yuji was angry, she didn't show it. LV Yufan, on the other hand, was even more composed. Ever since his rebirth, he had been thinking of killing Lu Qing every day. He was also anxious at this moment. Lu Qing had seen the three of them just now, but he didn't recognize them. This was the real joke. He wanted to see who Lu Qing could fool this time. Then tell me, what's going on? As for the emperor, he was even more patient. His voice was neither happy nor angry. It was impossible to tell what he meant. Lu Qing couldn't figure it out, but he thought that his crying performance would make people suspect the person who accused him of killing his wife and children. I didn't expect that they were still killed. Lu Qing's face was full of tears and snot. He looked dazed and helpless. If he didn't know that Lin Yuexiang and her children were his wife and children, the ministers present, including the emperor, might really believe his nonsense. Originally, the civil and military officials thought that there was an inside story. After hearing this sentence, their faces were full of mischief. This Lu Qing probably didn't recognize his wife and children, right? Interesting, really interesting. The emperor almost laughed out loud. It was very interesting. His wife and children were standing in the throne room. He could see them at a glance. Lu Qing was actually crying because he lost his wife and children. Who was he acting for? Did he really think that he was old and blind? Lu Qing felt that something was wrong, but he still had to continue. Chapter 1528. I really didn't expect it. I did as the second princess said. Even if she hates me now, I was afraid that my wife and children would be in danger, so I didn't dare to secretly go back to see them. It's been more than 10 years. I miss them every day. I thought that they would still be alive and well. I didn't expect that the second princess didn't keep her word. Lu Qing continued to cry bitterly. If it weren't for his wife and children standing by the side, all of them radiating radiance, they would definitely be moved by this man's infatuation. Now they only wanted to say, "Who are you trying to fool?" Tang Guo wanted to laugh out loud. She raised her head and looked at the emperor. The emperor happened to be holding back his laughter and looked at her. Then the father and daughter silently looked away. They couldn't laugh. If they laughed out loud, it would attract Lu Qing's attention. There would be no good show to watch. LV Yufan's mouth trembled. This emperor, this eldest princess, how come he didn't realize that these two people were so interesting in his previous life? At this time, Lu Qing was like a clown in everyone's eyes. He was affectionately acting out the pain of losing his wife and children to make them happy. Lin Yuexiang was wearing a dignified official's robe. She calmly stood on the side. There was also a minister who was familiar with her. He whispered, "Official Lin, is he sick?" "I don't know. This official is not familiar with him." Oh. Even children are not familiar with each other. This was also the first time he saw him. The emperor suppressed all of his laughter. His voice was still dignified. "What do you mean?" "Your Majesty, Lu Qing has been wrongly accused." For better or worse, Lu Qing had studied hard for 10 years and was lucky enough to pass the exam. Why didn't he stand high up in the imperial court and instead chose to become the second princess's son-in-law? It's all because the second princess threatened Lu Qing with the lives of his wife and children. She also plotted to make herself fall into the water. Lu Qing had no choice but to go down to save her. If Lu Qing didn't agree, Lu Qing didn't care about his own life. He just didn't want to see his wife and children die. In the end, he had no choice but to agree to the second princess's conditions. The emperor was really angry. Although Tang Shi had been flirtatious in recent years and had secretly kept a gigolo. If Tang Shi didn't cause any trouble, she would lock herself up in her princess residence and play by herself. Lu Qing could tolerate the fact that she didn't report him, and he couldn't be bothered to care. Which dynasty didn't have a few romantic princesses? Tang Shi and Tang Zhao, these two children, had always been under his watch. He knew exactly what he had done. "Lu Qing, you said that the second princess threatened you. Do you have any evidence?" Hearing the emperor's question, Lu Qing panicked for a moment. In a hurry, he said, "The maids in the residence can testify for me." "All right then. Summon the second princess and her maids into the palace." Tang Shi was angry. Compared to Lu Qing, she was still the emperor's daughter. The eunuch who delivered the edict gave her a brief reminder. When she heard that Lu Qing had a wife and children and that she used his wife and children's lives to threaten him to marry her, she was really about to faint from anger. She didn't want to be the eldest princess anymore. She just wanted to live a good life. With Lu Qing as her son-in-law, she was really unlucky for 8 lifetimes. "Lu Qing, everyone is here. Who are the witnesses you mentioned?" the emperor asked. Lu Qing's gaze fell on Wanzhou first. "Wanzhou, do you think that the second princess threatened me with my wife and children, so I had no choice but to marry her?" Wanzhou quickly nodded. Yes. She knew what Lu Qing was doing. When he succeeded, her status would also be high. Chapter 1529. Tang Shi had never liked her, and she didn't like her either. If she could destroy Tang Shi this time, she would become Lu Qing's favorite person. Tang Shi chuckled and looked at Tang Gua. She whispered, no wonder Imperial Sister was willing to let her go. She is a scourge. Imperial Father, Wan Zhu is not someone by this son's side. Not long after entering the princess residence, she has been serving by Lu Qing's side. This son believes that her confession is biased. Then the other maids should count, right? Lu Qing looked at Tang Shi with resentment, as if she had really killed his wife and child. Tang Shi didn't know that Lin Yuexiang was Lu Qing's wife. Since Lu Qing wanted to put the blame on her today, she didn't want this decoration who often caused her trouble. Count, of course it counts. Then, Lu Qing turned around and looked at the rows of maids. Most of them were favored by him. He usually treated them well. At the critical moment, it was time for them to play a role. Xiangcao, Yunyi, Hongzhu. Lu Qing called out their names one by one. You must tell the truth. Did the princess threaten me with my wife and child? Was that why I had to marry the princess? Some of you must know that the princess sent people to kill my wife and child, right? In fact, Lu Qing was still very nervous. Although he had a good relationship with these maids and bought all the good things for them, he didn't treat them badly at all. He was sure that these maids would say what he wanted. But this was a matter of life and death. Who wouldn't be nervous? The civil and military officials were also very interested in this show. How long would Lu Qing act alone? You can tell the truth, the emperor said. He didn't have much patience with Lu Qing. This jerk, how did he choose him and choose him as the top scholar? The maids exchanged glances with one another before speaking. Replying to your majesty, second princess never knew that second prince consort had a wife and child. It's even more impossible for her to use his wife and child to force him into marriage. This servant also didn't hear that second princess sent people to kill second prince consort's wife and child. All of the maids that Lu Qing had touched said the same thing. Lu Qing's thinking was too simple. Tang Shi was able to let these maids serve him without worry. Didn't she have something on him? Tang Shi was different from Tang Gua. Tang Gua had been doted on since she was a child. She was just an ordinary second princess. Whatever she needed, she had to fight for it herself. If the people in the residence were not at ease, would she be able to use it? The families of these maids were all in her hands. Not to mention that she didn't do those things. Even if she did, would the maid dare to say that she did it in public? How could Lu Qing's small favors be more important than their family? Lu Qing was dumbfounded. Why was it different from what he had imagined? Oh. The emperor saw Lu Qing's dumbfounded look and kindly reminded him, Lu Qing, do you know who sued you today? Who is it? Lu Qing asked subconsciously. The emperor raised his hand and pointed at Lin Yuexiang and her son. The first is this year's top scholar, Lu Yufan. The second is the imperial city's little divine doctor, Lu Yuji. The third is this dynasty's #1 female official, Official Lin. Lu Qing, don't you know them? Lu Qing looked stiffly at Lin Yuexiang's position. His face was full of disbelief as he said with a trembling voice, You are Yuexiang. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.